And I didn't hear any complaints from the folks doing it. You know, they did as they were directed. They did their jobs above and beyond. I mean, they really put effort and a lot of hard work here. I don't know if the convention center is available in the capacity that we had before. And what I heard was events getting, but not just Super Bowl, but beyond that, you know, this room is not available, that's not available. I don't know what the convention center has to offer. I know it's a big area, but I'll leave it there. Councilman Vieira, Councilman Citro.
And if I may, I mean, I seconded the motion. It's merely a request for feasibility. We can be told no, and that's fine. But something to remember is that God willing, and that what are we in the end of March, which is amazing, people will be vaccinated, and we can be here if everyone's vaccinated and back to more normalcy. So I'm fine with asking. I don't, you know, I mean, if it's feasible, if the answer is we invested too much in this to go backwards, that's a reasonable opinion, but I don't see anything wrong with just asking.
All right, Councilman Citro, then back to Councilman Dingfelder.
Mr. Chair, some months ago, my office put together a group of Tampa firefighters to receive their firefighter of the quarter, and I believe we did 4 or 5 plus ATU plus a couple other things. And at that time, I received a bill, and it went to the city of Tampa for, I believe, $3,800 for a 3-hour meeting that we had to do all these accommodations. Are we now talking not only moving city council back to the convention center, are we talking also every board, every committee, every commission that meets in council chambers to do their work for the city? Are we talking about moving them too? You know, a life is worth millions and millions of dollars, but we were spending a heck of a lot of money being at the Tampa Convention Center. I'd like to weigh cost values because we are coming out of this pandemic now. And what cost will it be to move everything over there again, plus staff power, as opposed to staying here until we finally get out of this pandemic? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good comments all around, good questions. Let's talk about money for one thing. It's my understanding when I talked to Mr. Rogero, and I know, listen, I know at the end of the day, federal money is still tax money, but at the end of the day, it's not local money. That for all of these plastic shields, everything they can possibly document, we put in for reimbursement, and we get that money back through the PPP programs. Okay, I know that for a fact. So, yes, we don't want to be frivolous with local or federal money, but I don't think this is frivolous. I think this is about doing our job, and we don't know how many months it's going to be more. It might just be, hopefully, God willing, it's just till the summer. But if things, don't get significantly better, it could go into the fall again. So we're not talking about, just like next week. We're definitely talking about, at a minimum, several more months. In terms of staff, Mr. Chairman, yeah, they did a wonderful job, and we pat them on the back for it. But we're not telling them they didn't do a good job when we don't like what they did. It worked for the time being, but I don't think it's good for our relationship with the public. I don't think, I just think the public expects more. And like Mr. Vieira said, the letter is a request. It's a request that staff look at the feasibility of it and all the factors and the availability. Obviously, I don't want to throw anybody out of a legitimate use at the convention center, but if Una has the room, I think we should go back, and I hope you do too. So.
All right, if there is no, Councilman Coons.
As you recall, when this move was going to be made, I made comments about it because I knew we were back in that situation. I knew it was going to come back to us being sheltered in here, away from the public. We have to understand who our client is. Yeah, I know, Mr. Citro, we're talking money. Well, I look at some of these costs of construction costs that the city incurs from these developers and builders to do jobs, and I always say, well, why does it cost that much to do this kind of job? I can go build a new house, the type of money you're charging me. I understand feasibility, but I also understand that we're the legislative body of this city. And sometimes the wires get crossed sometimes. And, and we have a charter, but sometimes it's confusing about powers at times. And it's the legislative body. And I said before, it should be our option where we want to be housed at, or how we want to work. Because the public doesn't get a chance to really talk to the administration or express their concerns. That doesn't happen. They may send a letter or go to the customer service center, or by chance the mayor might entertain some folks to come in and meet her office over there. But for the vast majority of things that go on to this city, they contact us. They want that connection with their councilman in this body. We don't have a connection right now. Let's just face it, gentlemen. We don't have a connection. People are downstairs, second floor. They don't get a chance to look in our eyes. We don't get a chance to look in their eyes. And it is a different feel. It is a different feel. But again, we have to look at the feasibility of the convention center. And like I said, we should have, before we should have held, at the Super Bowl was just a quick tenant, a weak tenant. And we had to look at the long haul. And that's why I say that, I wish that we would have made sure we kept, after the Super Bowl, reserved right at the Super Bowl. So if we needed to go back, we would be able to go back and do a lot of different things. But I think it doesn't, Mr. Vieira said, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and ask at this point. But I think ultimately, even with the ask, if council feels this is what we need to do, then I think that the convention center, if this body wants to do so, needs to make those arrangements if this council decides to go back. Because we are the legislative body, we have a job to do, and the people want to hear from us, see us, and at times I want to do that too, to be able to look into people's eyes and talk to people so they can understand that I'm really concerned about their issues. And that's the way I feel about it, Mr. Chair. We can take a look at these items, but eventually, if it comes back and we feel we need to go back, then we have to express to the administration we need to go back, and express to the convention center we need to go back.
We have a motion. All right, we have a motion from Councilman Dingfelder, second from Councilman Vieira. Yes, sir.
And just really fast, and thank you, Mr. Chair, just really fast. I'll support this, but again, it's merely asking a question. And also, I'm also voting for this and the idea of asking for information, because costs were brought up. I don't know what the costs are, and that could, inform my decision on whether or not I would support that. But again, asking for information in that regard is, I think, a reasonable request, and I'm willing to support that. Thank you.
We have a motion from Councilman Dingfelder and a second from Councilman Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council.
Very good. All right, we have, I believe, the Chief of Staff standing by for any questions. I'm sorry, Chief of Staff or Mr. Ruggiero? Yes, Dennis Rogero and Sal Ruggiero. All right, a lot of Ruggiero.
Item 61.
No, that's it. There he is. Item 61, that goes with 62. Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Council and Mr. Chairman. It's like a nightmare. We keep coming back, huh? On March 4th, I briefed you on a long-term vision that we shared regarding city facilities. And at that time, Councilman Dingfelder requested a 2-week extension to allow for further review and consideration by our staff. So we're back to report on that today. But we're focusing in on 2515 East Hannah. And that's what's on the table today, is we're requesting to go forward with the city center at this time. Today's presentation will share the many benefits of this project. And finally, each of you had specific questions and comments, and today's presentation was designed to respond to those questions and concerns. For example, Councilman Miranda wanted a report on lease savings. Councilman Carlson had 4 points presented in an email that we're going to address. Councilman Citro made a wonderful suggestion as far as placing a city wellness clinic within the new building for employees, and that's going to happen. Councilman Goods wanted public outreach, and I think you saw some of that today, and you'll get more of a report on it as we go through the presentation with the subject matter experts. But I will say that knowing the folks that put this together, I know we have met your expectations, and we are asking you to allow us to proceed with this great project. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to the Director of Land and Asset Management, Adri Kalina. And Madam Clerk, if you could put the PowerPoint on, we appreciate it.
Okay, we have the PowerPoint on. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, council members. Adri Colina, Director of Logistics and Asset Management. If we could get to the next slide, please. The one after, please. Next slide, please. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, as Mr. Ruggiero mentioned, we are here today to talk to you about this building that you see before you right now and the property that it sits on, 2515 East Hannah Avenue. It is a vacant city-owned warehouse, and we are requesting your approval to demolish and design a new building through the amendments and the funding that you have in items 61 and 62 before you. I know you see, as I see, an eyesore in this building, but I'm asking if you could look beyond the eyesore and think of the potential that the 11 acres that this building has and the hope that it offers to that entire community and the solution that it presents to two problems that Mr. Ruggiero and Mr. Ruggiero shared with you 2 weeks ago. Next slide, please. So one of the two expiring leases that they spoke to you about is the Development Services Building at 1400 North Boulevard. It's home to nearly 100 employees. And if you see in this picture, it is an old picture. And you can tell it's well over a year because it's a packed parking lot. It's pre-COVID days, back at a time when customers were able to come to the building. This particular building was built in 1968. So as we all know, it certainly didn't have energy efficiencies in mind when it was built. We have been leasing this building since 1993, and our operating and maintenance costs annually are $183,000. This particular building is not the best building for neither our customers nor our employees. Again, I'd ask that you look at this parking lot and you see it full. The most this parking lot has to offer is 95 parking spaces. Of those 95 parking spaces, we have dedicated 4 ADA spaces, and in Mayor Castor's commitment to sustainability and resiliency, there are 6 electric vehicles that operate out of that building, and their charging stations are there. So what does that mean? That leaves us with 85 parking spaces. And council members, the Development Services Division is home to 80 employees. So if you do the math, that leaves 5 spaces, a whopping 5 spaces for our customers. What we have done to try to ensure some spaces for our customers, the inspectors that work out of that building are parking remotely at 15 different sites just to be able to improve our customer experience. Next slide, please. And one thing I didn't mention is that last building we saw at Development Services requires a lot of money just to be able to stay in that building. And although we do have the option to renew that lease, it doesn't make sense financially, and it is not a good use of taxpayer dollars for a building that we will never call home, not ours, not ours. The next building that the lease is expiring in March of 2023 is at 4900 West Lemon Street, and that's home to a little over 60 employees. And if you look at this building, you'll see to the left 275. And when we entered into this lease in 2017, this 1981 building, again, not the best in terms of energy efficiency, we knew it was short-term. This building will be demolished in 2023, leaving those employees with no place to call home. Again, it just really takes us back to that eyesore and the potential that it offers. Although expanding 275, which will happen once this building is demolished, is great for improving mobility, it's not great for the employees that are being displaced. Next slide, please. So again, the 11 acres offers so much hope and so much potential. We've been looking through it all, and Mayor Castor has been very clear on her 5 strategic goals: strengthening community-centric services, enhancing workforce development, increasing housing affordability, improving infrastructure and mobility, establishing sustainability and resiliency. And there are times when a project will hit one of those goals, 2, 3 on the best day. But council members, we have such a rare opportunity before us today to hit all 5 of these strategic goals. Next slide, please. And although I said these are Mayor Castor's strategic goals, the reality is it's a shared vision. I have heard each and every one of you, even just this morning, when we were talking about workforce development and the importance of investing in our residents to have the best and the brightest here, when we talked about sustainability and the green space that is needed, all those things are items that are very important to each and every one of you. So this is a shared vision. We have an opportunity to co-locate 6 city departments under one roof. Think about how quickly we'll be able to answer our customers' questions if we can talk to the person across the hall or on the next floor. And think about our customers will be able to park. We will have ample parking for them. And just think about for a minute, this building will be something the employees can call home. It will be ours, a state-of-the-art LEED silver building. We will be revamping that customer experience as we have already begun with the hiring of Diane Jamai, of our director. That team will be housed in that building. There is no question. Our customers will be first and foremost in that site. We'll be creating jobs, not just during the demolition and design phase, the construction and well beyond, because our workforce development team will be there. Council members, we are strengthening partnerships on all levels, with our employees by investing in them, with our neighbors. Those are our community members, but we are hopeful if you approve this today that those will be our neighbors. We will be strengthening partnerships with the private sectors through our workforce development program. So again, we are really making, or we will be taking great strides if you approve this today. Next slide. So the Hannah Avenue concept continues to strengthen the citizen services. We have, again, that interdepartmental collaboration that I spoke of. We will improve community trust. Our EBO office will be right there on Hannah Avenue, so small women and minority businesses that want to be certified in that program will be able to walk up, drive up, they ride the bus, there's a bus station 5 minutes away. However they want to reach us, they can, and we will be accessible to them. Other neighborhood offices will be right there on site, enhancing inclusivity and promoting transparency. It is a unique opportunity that I'm so excited to be part of. We will be bringing City Hall and government into the community. We will not just be their public servants, we will be their neighbors. Next slide, please. So where are we now? We're very much in the pre-development phase. We're excited about it, but we're beginning this journey. We have spoken with the Neighborhood Watch presidents and the Neighborhood Association presidents, many of whom you heard from today. And we're excited to be able to continue that dialogue and that communication, which will be a two-way communication. We need to hear from them probably more than they need to hear from us, because we need to design a building that will complement the community. This is exactly what Councilman Carlson said and Councilman Dingfelder. We want a building in that community that everyone will be proud of. This morning, I believe it was Ms. Gordon talking about the amenities in the green space. That's a conversation we need to continue. It's something we want as well. We need to continue the dialogue that we have begun to work on that site preparation. The dialogue will continue. and be assured you will continue to hear from us and see us. We will provide you updates, and we will be before you again in a few months, because there are things we're going to be needing from you. This partnership is one that we will be before you regularly. And again, if council approves these resolutions, we are prepared to begin our community workshops and continue that dialogue. Next slide, please. And now, to let you know a little bit about the aggressive public engagement, we have Janelle McGregor.
Good afternoon, Council. As Ms. Kalina shared, we are ready to embark on a very aggressive and robust community engagement plan that I'm proud to say is being led by some of the most all-star, incredible outreach experts that we have here at the city, who have relationships within the community and, more importantly, are passionate about serving our community members. Now, the purpose of this plan is to provide our community members with timely and accurate information that aligns with each phase of the project. And our ultimate goal is to include all of our stakeholders and ensure that they are part of this exciting and transformative journey right alongside us. Because this new development project is for the community, and it's imperative that it is done in lock arms with our community members as well. And that's going to take a comprehensive plan. So we look forward to engaging each and every one of you along the way and to providing that accurate and timely information that we are ready to share with our community members. Thank you.
Do we have another speaker on this?
Yes. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Brenda McKenzie. I'm the Director of Workforce Partnerships. I wanted to speak briefly on this opportunity. The opportunity is truly significant from a workforce development perspective. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity to meaningfully connect people with lasting career pathways, using current methodologies of collaboration and cross-pollination in creating dynamic learning environments. In short, it's a living lab. It's a living lab, a model for community-focused training, creating a supportive ecosystem of learning, growth, and connectivity, elements that significantly bolster long-term success. Community-focused workforce greatly aids in outreach and in recruitment, helping us and our partners reach more people, connecting them with needed resources and training. The collaborative facility, such as HANA, serves to greatly aid career planning with a focus on pathways. Our interaction will be designed to provide tools and support to guide people for their entire working lives. For the level of impact we want, this has to be more than simply connecting people to a job, but connecting people to a resilient path forward, in short, a career. Thank you. Our next speaker.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. And speaking of connectivity, thank you. I'm going to speak to how we're going to manage the mobility and traffic within this area. We understand that this is a very high concern for the community. And as other speakers before me have mentioned, we are committed to listening to the community and working with the community to improve the mobility options that they have and to improve the infrastructure so that there aren't undue stresses on the neighborhood. We have a traffic study that's currently underway. We are going to expand the scope of that study and look at many aspects of how we can more efficiently move people around, benefit the neighborhood from this development, and also fold it into our strategic initiatives. The biggest way we're doing it is by the location itself. It sits on a rail line, it sits on an existing transit corridor. It is very consistent with transit-oriented development type principles where we take development to where mobility options exist. So that's the first thing. Our focus will be safety and Vision Zero. We're committed to this. We're going to make sure that this development includes safe infrastructure, visible infrastructure, better street lighting, both for night times, crash reduction, those type of things. We'll preserve the neighborhood character. That's going to be another critical consideration. This neighborhood has a certain character. The schools there, the community there, the people that live there. We will work with them to preserve that character and enhance where possible. This project and the scope of this project will require roadway and intersection improvements, better site access, and consideration of projected growth. All of this will be considered in our traffic study and subsequent infrastructure and mobility projects. We'll work with regional partners as well, like the county, FDOT, HART, to make sure we have better transit options, to make sure that we have better connectivity from major arterials like Nebraska and Hillsborough Avenue, which connect to the interstate as well. And we'll also make sure that we have active transportation options available for low carbon transport. And finally,
Thank you.
we will once again revisit with the community, understand their concerns, attend all engagement meetings, and ensure that what we heard is what we're going to do going forward. So with that, I'll hand it over to Keon, our next speaker, to speak to housing affordable. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Council. As he stated, I'm Keon Henderson from Housing and Community Development Division. As you know, a lot of the programs that we do offer some one-on-one services where we do need the clients to kind of come to our location. We have classes, we have workshops, and we do offer that services to collect some application. This location would really be important for us as it's closer to public mass transit to help those who need those services to have easier access to come and access those services. The accessibility of the public service really is considered to be a performance criterion for us, and it does reflect the capacity that we have to accurately recognize that diversity and nature of the different needs for these clients are met. So as we have those who have ADA compliance, those who have transit needs, this location just kind of offers us a more centralized location so that we can offer more services to the public. And to this, I'll hand it over to Dennis.
Mr. Rohero.
Thank you, Council. Good afternoon. Dennis Rohero, Chief Financial Officer. As we've shared with you in the past, this $6.2 million item is for an initial investment in a series of projects that are likely to exceed $100 million. And a price tag of that magnitude is going to require some sort of debt service issuance, likely a bond or a series of bonds. Fortunately, as we've also discussed, we have several ways to mitigate these expenses. First, of course, the potential land sales associated with the downtown police headquarters and the Spruce Street properties. They're going to be millions, even tens of millions of dollars. Another very significant opportunity that will help mitigate these costs is not paying the $35 million anticipated to rehab and maintain the downtown police headquarters. And a reminder that that $35 million is not currently in the budget, but it will be a large cost avoidance we won't have to budget in the future. As we've shared, the bottom line on police headquarters is very large expenses are coming if we remain in that building. As this slide shows you, and as you heard the director speak to, we'll also benefit from the reallocation of leases and maintenance funding that exists right now. And you see here, we're anticipating approximately $800,000 a year to offset the debt service costs. We'll also have the opportunity to allocate costs associated with the workforce development and receive funding from other sources, including a potential $10 to nearly $20 million in state and federal grant funding that we'll be pursuing. One note on the police headquarters. Councilman Citro had asked at the last meeting if there's any debt service attached to the building, undoubtedly remembering the debt restructuring we did in the middle of last year. To refresh, The mayor recommended and council approved a debt restructuring that included the 1996 Capital Appreciation Bonds, or CABs, and they were associated with, among other things, purchase of the police headquarters downtown. First, thank you again for that approval. You'll recall it was a very proactive action in the midst of very challenging times that continue today, and has already provided budget flexibility and cash flow relief, and will continue to provide that through 2023. The only condition remaining on the police headquarters is any proceeds from the sale will have to be used for another public purpose project. And of course, this project appears to fit the bill nicely. And of course, in addition to these dollars and cents benefits, there are those benefits that can't be counted in dollars and cents, and you've heard the team reference some of them already. The potential for future development in the surrounding areas due to this project, operational efficiencies and effectiveness that come from consolidation and centralization, and the equity increase by placing these services in the heart of some underserved areas. Finally, nothing as large as this project is done in a vacuum, and we'll incorporate it into the budget and the capital improvement plan. Thank you, that's all I have, and I can answer any financial related questions you have.
Are you the final speaker, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, Councilman Goods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fine job this afternoon and this morning. I guess, Sal, we had a brief conversation, and we need to make sure our communication is clear to the public. There's a lot of rumors out in the public's eye. We have to make sure we clean it up so the public can understand, and make sure that the public knows that this $100 million or may exceed $100 million is not for solely a police station. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
So I want to make sure the public understands that whatever PSAs you guys have out there, because there's a lot of miscommunication that this project is solely for the police department. And I heard different departments, a few departments, I didn't hear all 6, but I heard a bunch of departments. And I also want to know in phases, if this goes forward, how do these phases, what will be phased in first? Do we know? Again, is this money, this $6.2 million, is this a phase to look at the whole bill design for this police portion as well, for these other 6 departments? Can you elaborate on that for me?
Yes, sir. Take the police building out of it right now. We're not dealing with that today. We're not to that point. We're dealing with the city center. The $6.2 million that's in front of you today is to do a design and demolition on the site at 2515 East Hannah. And that's what we're solely focusing on today.
Let me make sure I understand what you said. Is this $6.2 million is strictly for the Hannah old building for this 6 departments?
Correct.
And this is no way this $6.2 million has any effect with the police department potential down the road.
Correct. We're not to that point yet with TPD.
Gentlemen, I just want to make that clear because, again, you have a lot of people that have a lot of misrumors that are out there, and I want to make sure we clear this up with this council and those who are listening and the media who may be watching to understand that this particular dollars you're asking for is for the design bill of a city center that will have those departments that are related to housing, EBO, economic development, and some of the other issues that we've got going, because those leases are going to be expired within a year or 2. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Thank you, sir. You have a Chairman.
Councilman Citro, and I'll go after you, and we'll keep going down there. Go ahead, sir.
We're still dealing with rumors. No, if we can ever get over
Like that-
rumors
like that-
and have the citizens call us.
No wonder it was Fleetwood Mac's biggest selling album. Rumors. Everybody likes rumors.
We're sitting here talking when I should be expressing myself to you. What I'm hearing, the people that want the straight facts that call me or call one of us, what they're asking for, and I understand their point of view, but I also understand the security for the workers in this proposed building, so these proposed complexes. But instead of the citizens looking from the outside in to this monolithic building, they want something that's more inviting in their neighborhood. Over at the county center here, we have a coffee shop deli. Is that something that could also be put in so that not only the workers, but maybe some of the few residents can stop in and get breakfast or lunch or a cup of coffee? And I saw you mention also a media center. Can we also involve some sort of room where neighborhood associations can meet, where public can meet, where we can do, city council or the city of Tampa can do meetings there on spot for the neighborhood there or the surrounding neighborhoods? I think these are little things that the community will say, hey, wait a second, the city wants us to be a part of this, instead of being, again, this monolithic wall where they're only staring from the outside in.
No, I think you hit it correctly. I mean, we have that an idea about having the community room. I spoke to citizens myself that want, you know, that sort of atmosphere, and we're on board with that. And one gentleman I talked to in particular that lives in East Tampa wanted a place for, you know, the mayor's youth corps to meet and the group men to boys to men, and that's all possible, and nothing's off the table. So that's our promise. Just let us go forward with this, and you're going to be proud of what you see.
Well, I'm hoping so. I know the great work that you and your staff have done and the city staff have done. I envision this being a place for on the weekends where people can have little art shows, they can have community markets or something where it's actually drawing the neighborhood there. Instead of just saying, I got to go pay a bill.
No, I agree with you. And just let me say on what you talked about, a cafe. And I don't know, I know I mentioned this before, under the workforce development, we are looking at having like a cooking school in there, and that would kind of morph into this cafe-style system that you're talking about. So it's all on the table.
Excellent. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Before I go to Councilman Vera and Councilman Dingfelder, great points by Councilman Citro, great points by Councilmember Goods. You know, we want it to be a draw for the neighborhood and for everybody around it. The thing is, when I talk to people, as I talked to somebody the other day, I used to pay my water bill on Nebraska Avenue, right? I said, that's not there anymore. I had to pay my business tax on Nebraska Avenue. Oh, that's not there. Where do I go? I go Lemon Street. And they have to go hidden behind the interstate across from West Shore Mall that's going to be demolished soon. And it's very confusing. Not that there's no parking, it's just hard to get to. I mean, people don't know it exists there. But the operating costs, the fact that we cannot renew that lease, that building is scheduled for demolition because of the widening of the interstate or whatever FDOT has planned, where are we going to go? We're going to keep spending money. We're going to give money to somebody else, another landlord. With the building on North Boulevard, very limited parking. You accommodate the employees and you have barely any spaces for residents, people that have to come in. And we've spent over $5 million, if the numbers are the same, since 1993. We're giving money away. Whereas everything that has been presented, everything you've talked about, that all the speakers talked about, a true city center. It may not be City Hall, but services are all within the same area. Councilman Citro, Councilman Goods, and I know the other councilors are going to bring things up. But a true community space, whether it's an auditorium for people to have city council meetings there and people to go to, or the mayor's youth corps, or whatever, a cafe, you know, a real destination. I think in the public comment a lot was made, the police department, the police department, the police department. This is a one-stop shop for so many city services that makes it less confusing. I mean, because like I said, people go, well, where on Lemon Street? Where this? I'm not used to this. I'm not good with computers. I want to go in person. But I think this is a move in the right direction. And it's land that we own, correct?
Yes, sir.
There may be a land swap with, not a land swap, but Spruce, relocating services off Spruce. That's a lot of real estate over there. We have a lot of things that come to fruition because of this. And I'll stop there. I have a couple of other things, but Councilman Vieira, Councilman Dingfelder have their hands up, so we'll go there. Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And you know, to me, one of the reasons why I support, I'm going to vote yes today, and I think this is a good project, is because this is an effort that seeks to move government closer to the people. You know, a lot of people, you know, I grew up in Temple Terrace, obviously Temple Terrace, separate city, and outside of the city of Tampa, but a lot of people in North Tampa, in maybe in Sulphur Springs, New Tampa, different parts, you know, take a look at downtown and going all the way downtown, and they go, oh, that's downtown. I gotta pay for parking. I gotta do this. I gotta put up with the traffic, all the big buildings, this and that. You put a basic city center with so many critical core municipal government services in the center of the city, that creates accessibility. And that's something that we should all support for all government services, And Councilman Citro, I'm so glad you brought that up. I salute you for that. Meeting space, including potentially looking at maybe even holding community meetings there, council meetings there every once in a while, just to bring government, again, closer to the people. Something that is always talked about a great deal. You know, one of the things we talk about misinformation, whether it's intentional, whether it's inadvertent. I think a lot of it is inadvertent. A lot of it is inadvertent. But you know, you remedy that through community engagement and whatnot. I think when this was rolled out, there was a lot of misinformation that came out, and I think a lot of that can be remedied through community engagement, which we know is going to happen, and whatnot. And you know what happened before 2 weeks when a lot of council members went, "What's this all about?" You know, let's go forward, because this is a really good project. This is something that is going to really benefit all of the city of Tampa and bring government services closer to the people. You know, the idea that this is something to become about, you know, trying to transform this into a debate on defunding the police, I do not believe at this time that that's something that's relevant to this center. The real issue is community engagement, and safety. You know, some folks from Seminole Heights talked about traffic studies that need to be done, et cetera. Again, that's part of the community engagement that we want to talk about. But the central idea is bringing government closer to the people. That's what this aspires to do. I think we should all support that. Thank you.
Councilman Dingfelder, and I apologize, I didn't see you through the 4 levels of plexiglass that my line of sight. Go ahead, sir.
It's no problem, Mr. Chairman. You always do a great job. Just a couple of things. I think we were very honored to have 3 different neighborhood association presidents with us this morning, Carol and Tim and I think her first name was Althea, Ms. Wynn, join us. And these were, I think Carol's neighborhood association was directly where this is, and then Tim and Althea were nearby. Some of the notes that I took from them, I seems to repeat traffic. I've got traffic written down several times over again. So Vic popped up on our screen a few minutes ago, and I want to say this to Vic as well as to all the staff who are involved, including Sal and Mr. Bennett, et cetera, that we need to treat this project just like it was a private development. We need to, in terms of traffic, we need to just put it through the paces, you know, be as demanding on ourselves, or maybe even more demanding on ourselves, to address, you know, any of the adjacent and nearby, you know, traffic impacts of this project. And I know you will, Sal, and Vic. I just want to say it on the record that that's the expectation of those 3 neighborhood leaders, as well as the rest of the community and council. I love some of the ideas that have been marched out, community rooms, use of the rail, maybe that would actually be a stop on some future rail, a public coffee shop / restaurant, you know, a place where everybody can really engage and interact between the community and city government. I think that's all fantastic. The only other thing I wanted to mention in regard to engagement is engagement with council. So everybody who made presentations, Adria Colina always does a great job, and the rest of those fantastic women who preceded you, Sal. Everybody keep that engagement with council coming on a very, very regular basis. Don't let this be one of those projects where the designer goes out to the community and meets with the mayor and meets with staff and gets it all done and then brings it to us all wrapped in a bow. Okay, work with us just like we're another part of the community engagement. And we will give you workshop time. I believe, Mr. Chairman, you'd be fine with that. We'll give you workshop time to come over with us and hash out some of those details or ask us questions like, Mr. Citra, here's the community room that we're thinking about. What do you think? Treat us just like you would just any other little neighborhood component in terms of engagement. And I know we'll continue to be happy on this throughout the project. And as I promised Mr. Bennett 2 weeks ago, we'll continue to give him unanimous votes on this thing, I think, as we're about to today. So thank you, Sal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And all the comments that were made and working together, the administration with council on this design and the plans moving forward and everything that has been said, we are going to create something that will be long-lasting, multi-generational, and something that we can be proud of, the neighborhood can be proud of, and that people in the city of Tampa will be proud that we've invested this amount of money in the community for something that benefits everyone. So thank you very much. Having said that, if there's no other comments, can I get a motion to move this resolution for 61?
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilman Citra. Do we have a second? Second. Second from Councilman Vieira. Roll call vote.
Goods?
I'm voting on the motion, but I'm making sure I'm clear that this phase is not regarding the police station this time. It's strictly the community center, the center, customer service center. So I'll vote a yes on that.
Mr. Ruggiero, just for clarity, this has nothing to do with the police department, the police building or relocating. This is just design, planning, and all that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a point of order.
Yes, sir.
I think before we say correct, and Sal, I trust your opinion sort of, but my experience on these type of planners is, and I hope that we're spending a lot of money on these planners, that they're going to be planning, at least conceptually, that entire 11, 12 acres. That includes the police department. And we might not be designing a building per se with part of that money, but I can't help but believe that when they go to lay out where the entrance is going to be, what the police part of this is going to have a whole different security, entrances and exits and traffic flow and everything. I got a feeling up front they're going to be looking at that too. So I think we need to be, careful to say, that maybe a little part of this is going to be sort of in the big picture planning of those entire 11, 12 acres. That includes the long-term potential move of the police department. I'm just potentially putting words in your mouth, Sal. I don't know.
I have to respectfully say no on that, sir, because number one, we have not acquired the property to do a public safety center. And then secondly, once we do acquire that property, that has to go out for RFQ. So it's a whole separate issue.
Oh, so there's a separate parcel?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I pointed that out.
I thought we were talking about the same parcel.
No, sir. I pointed that out in the briefings, that it's two separate parcels.
Okay, all right, well then I stand correct.
All right, thank you.
Let's get a clarification from Sal again, so people know that is a total different project versus the center.
All right. So the public safety issue is a different parcel, different vote, different day, different conversation. It has nothing to do with this.
Correct.
There we go. On record.
On record, that is.
All right. Yes, sir.
And thank you. And yeah, I mean, and that's something that I think was relatively clear, and that's why I said that this is going to require, as part of a larger project, a lot of community engagement with a lot of stakeholders, which I know the administration is going to do. And we can be part of that as council members. I think meeting with different community stakeholders to talk about this large project and the different sections of it. So that's what I was talking about when I talk about community involvement, which is this is part of it. So
That's why we have these conversations, Mr. Viera. We bring it all out in the open.
Chief Bennett, are you on the line by any chance?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. John Bennett, Chief of Staff. I think the details of the two different parcels have been covered well, and appreciate all the questions. I just want to go on the record and say that the administration, by discussing the police department, is just trying to be extremely transparent on the vision aspect of this, but making sure that we understood the scope of this initial ask. And, we've talked to council. We know there was a compressed discussion about this item, and we were granted continuance, which we appreciate. I appreciate Councilman Dingfelder's comments on the fact that we brought back these answers and the commitment to, putting this forward. But we just wanted to be long-range transparent on the vision, and Mr. Rogero could bring in the financial aspects on the global view. But I appreciate Mr. Rogero narrowing it down to the parcel aspect. But I just wanted to make a note towards transparency and working together between the administration and council. So there wasn't a secondary discussion that just came up whenever it did in the continuum of this project, and all of a sudden there was some alarm to it.
All right, thank you very much, sir. All right, the vote was being taken.
All right, I'll start over. Goods,
I vote yes on the project.
Dingfelder,
Is this 61 and 62 or just 61?
No, that's part 2 of this, 6.2. We're just in part 1.
Okay, yes.
Carlson, Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Vieira, and Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent.
All right, now for part 2, this is the 6.2 million. Do we have a motion to move the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilman Good, second from Councilman Citro. This is part 2 of this, so roll call.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Carlson, Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Vieira, Goods,
Yes.
and Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent.
All right, item 63 is,
Thank you, council.
thank you very much, sir. Item 63 is $29.1 million. Who is here for that? Brad Baird had a report. Do you have anything to add to that? This is the wastewater treatment plant master plan improvements.
Brad Baird, Deputy Administrator of Infrastructure. No, I'm here to answer any questions on this item.
Councilman Dingfelder?
Mr. Baird, brag on yourself a little bit. Tell us how great this this particular item is for BBE and for WMBE overall.
Yep, thank you.
No, you tell us.
Oh, yes, the breakdown of WMBEs is 10% for BBEs at $2.9 million, 2.4% for HBEs at almost $700,000, and then 3% WBEs at almost $900,000.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank staff. I know a lot of hard work goes into that. I want to thank our partners who are helping us rebuild the wastewater plant and working hard to get those numbers up where they need to be. Now millions of dollars in BBE and WMBE, so that's fantastic. Thank you, Brad, to you and your staff.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll be glad to move the item.
Councilman Goose, do you have anything, sir?
I want to thank Mr. Baird and his team and the EBO office for trying to achieve some goals we've been asking for. I think we're starting to move the needle just a little bit. We want to keep on moving it. And again, thank you for the work you've been doing, and again, on this project.
Do we have a motion to move this resolution?
So moved.
Councilman Dingfelder, did you want to move it, sir?
Doesn't matter. I'll second Joe's motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Citro, second from Councilman Dingfelder. Roll call vote.
Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Vieira, Goods,
Yes.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Carlson, and Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Vieira being absent at vote and Carlson being absent.
All right, next up is $34.6 million. Mr. Baird, can you give us a breakdown on that, just as Councilman Dingfelder requested for the previous one, so we know?
Yeah, sure. And I would like to preface this with, to build on what Councilman Goods and Councilman Dingfelder said. If you recall, we committed that in these design build efforts, we would have more flexibility to negotiate with the design build teams to improve the participation. And so you're seeing that here in these two GMPs, or initial guaranteed maximum prices for the two treatment plant large projects. And that's a result of having that flexibility. So the breakdown for the project at the water plant is for BBE, we have 4 firms that total almost $3.5 million of participation, totaling 10%. For HBE's 5 firms that amount to $422,000. And then WBE's 1 firm at $17,000. SLBE's, they're small local business enterprises, 4 firms at almost $1.3 million. So that totals up to almost 15% participation, 10% of which is for 4 black business enterprises. So that's pretty impressive.
Very impressive.
That's very good. Do we have a motion to move this resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilman Goods, second from Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote.
Miranda,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Carlson, Citro, and Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Citro being absent at vote and Carlson being absent.
All right, and next is part 2 of this. This is a transfer and reallocation of almost $20 million. Mr. Baird, do you have anything to add to this? This is just transfer within the existing, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Nothing to add to my memo on this.
Do you have a motion to move the resolution? We have a motion from Councilman Miranda. Do we have a second? Second from Councilman Vieira. Roll call vote.
Vieira, Goods,
Yes.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Carlson, Citro, Miranda,
Yes.
and Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Citro being absent at vote and Carlson being absent.
All right, next up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. This is Councilman Citro's item. Let's just hold off until he comes back. There he is. I was waiting for footsteps. Yeah. Go ahead. Councilman Citro, I know this is your item, and you had a memo. Would you like to speak on it, sir?
I would. Thank you very much. First of all, I have to say that my fellow Councilman Goods, and my brother know of a story that we were taught about 3 men who were in search of 3 others for a crime they had committed. And how these 3 people, these 3 men, had to reflect many times on the task that they were given. I have reflected upon this many, many times, and if you will please give me the chance to equate this, since we are a Super Bowl city, to playing football. With this resolution, if we were playing football, our opponent is not by people who do not understand this resolution, but by the Florida legislation with preemption. You've heard me rant many times about preemption, and the preemption that contradicts the City of Tampa's home rule, the ability to govern ourselves. There are those who would say that the City of Tampa does not have the power to move state representatives and state senators to submitting these preemption bills, but I tend to disagree. As soon as I put this resolution forward, and as well as when my fellow colleague Luis Vieira motioned for an ordinance in apprenticeship, no sooner did we vote on it than a preemption bill was submitted.
13 minutes.
So we may not have the power, but we sure as hell, excuse my language, have the persuasion. And our home rule is being affected in many, many ways, not only with our tree ordinance, short-term rental ordinance, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Where am I going with this, my friends? We, the City Council, and the city will not be faced with a 3 and out. I do not want to throw another Hail Mary in a form of a resolution that could be intercepted by state legislators. Do we want to hear from Councilman Miranda?
Mr. Miranda, I see your hand.
Yeah, after he finishes speaking,
Okay,
because I want to help him along and do something, but we can do something legally without going through a lot of hassle, I believe.
All right.
Give me a few seconds, Councilman Miranda.
Sure. Thank you.
We have a great team. With our administration as quarterback, our running back, who is Whit Reamer. We also have a great resiliency committee. Did I say that we wait until halftime, in between the sessions, that is about ready to end, and the next one coming up, and given the opportunity to rewrite this resolution so that it will do an end around from any preemption that the legislation is putting forward. We can achieve the score, the touchdown of making the City of Tampa a clean 100% resilient city. And we can do it in such a way, gentlemen, we control the budget. We can score first downs. LED lights throughout the city, that's a first down. Solar panels on all governmental buildings, that's a first down. Electric vehicles in our fleet, that's a first down. And we can achieve that goal before 2045 by taking these first down increments. Gentlemen, if I can make a motion that this resolution that was written by my office with help of so many other people was a little aggressive. The misconception that the public had, as well as stakeholders, is that we wanted to do away with all gas stations. We wanted to stop planes from flying. We wanted to stop ships from sailing. We wanted to ruin every industry that had to do with petroleum and fossil fuel, which was the furthest thing from the truth. This resiliency, this resolution won't destroy jobs. Matter of fact, it will create jobs. It will create careers. Reflecting on what has happened, my motion would be to let's continue this resolution until July 15th. at which point beforehand, I will submit a draft of a rewritten resolution where we hopefully will not have to deal with preemption from the state of Florida.
Second.
Wait, all right.
With that, I would like to hear from the other councilmen. My motion still will stand. And after the vote is taken, I have a few closing words. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council.
We have a second from Councilman Dingfelder. Councilman Miranda has had his hand up, and then we'll go to Councilman Dingfelder. Yes, sir, Miranda.
Thank you. As the second to the original motion, I agree with my colleague, Mr. Citro. However, July is a hard month because we don't come back and it's only got 2 weeks in July. And August will be kind of full. So either at the end of August or at the end of June. And I'll tell you why. I agree with what he's saying. However, this is not the end of the beginning.
No.
This is a beginning that's going to have more than likely no end. Because, you know, revolution and inventions are coming out every day, not only in solar, but in electric batteries. You have the quantum battery, the solid state battery, the lithium battery. Volkswagen's coming up with a new battery. And these things are coming out in competition quicker than they can be put on the drawing board. There's another one. And it's not about us against fossil fuel. It's about fossil fuel eating up the environment. And when you look what happened in California, and you look just last night through Texas and Texas and Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and what's going on, possibly Savannah and even further north, it's been devastating. What about the hurricanes? More and stronger. Tornadoes, not one or two, but many in clusters that form gigantic tornadoes that can rip apart anything. We have to understand what we're doing to ourselves in this world that we live in. We are destroying where we live, like it or not, realize it or not. The facts are in. But what I wanted to say to Mr. Citro and the council members also, that what we should do is set up a goal. We just bought 6 vehicles today that were electric. We had 4. So right now we know we have at least 10. We ought to set a goal, because what I see coming in 2027, in the next year or so, we're going to have the last bite at the last amount of monies from the CIP tax. And then that ends in 2027. It's gone. So what I'd like the council to do is to ask the administration what their needs are between now and 2027 in vehicle replacement. So we have a goal, so we know what we can do and what we can buy to make it self-sufficient in the electrical area, so that we have a standard set that no other city may have. And I agree with that, but we have to have some type of an understanding with the administration that by 2025, 2026, 2024, 2023, we're going to continue. At what rate do we meet that goal? And that's why I think that the council ought to ask the administration for a report in the next 60 days before Mr. Citro's motion for July, that to give us the need and necessities of the replacement vehicles that they need, so we can go on and start having a goal in mind to have a certain percent by that certain time, so that we can tell the world that Tampa, one of the fastest growing cities in America, means it for real. We have to do something with goals, but we have to know what the needs and necessity are, so we can establish that goal percent-wise. And that's what I like to have Mr. Citro into his motion, if I may.
I have no problem with that. Councilman Miranda, you are a brilliant man. I feel that I will go that far. I will say that with the resiliency committee that the mayor has set up with Whit Rimmer heading that, we probably through them can set those goals and set that timeline. But I agree with you 100%. Now, do you want me to put that in my motion?
If I may ask, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And I will include Councilman Miranda's recommendations in my goal.
And I'll put that in writing through Mary and give it to the clerk.
Thank you. Is that amenable with you, Councilman Dingfelder, as you were the second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilman Dingfelder, do you have anything, sir?
Yeah, and I'm glad Councilman Citro mentioned the mayor's resiliency committee, which I understand is met a few times, is actually meeting tomorrow, and they'll be continuing to meet. Mr. Reamer, is Mr. Reamer on the line? Because I'm curious about.
We have Chief Bennett on the line. I don't know if Whit Reamer's on the line.
All right, either Chief Bennett or Whit, if you're on the line. What I'm curious about is the specific timetable that the Resiliency Committee is scheduled to meet, and more importantly, when would we expect to see the report and the recommendations from that committee based upon the timetable you have right now?
John Bennett, Chief of Staff. First, Councilman Dingfelder, let's make sure Mr. Reamer is not on the line. He may very well be.
Mr. Reamer,
All right,
are you
hearing
on?
nothing. Yeah, hearing nothing. Of course, there's the structured meeting agenda that Mr. Reamer has put together with the advisory committee, and those dates extend out a little bit from where we are right now. As far as bundling those recommendations and merging those with the Resilient Cities Catalyst report, the Resilient Cities Catalyst report is actually moving through its final drafts right now, which is separate and apart from the advisory committee. And actually, I was able to get Mr. Reamer in my office, so I will let him update the timeline on the advisory committee project. And then I'd like to come back and talk about Councilman Miranda's addendum to the motion. So here's Whit Reamer.
Thanks, Chief, and thanks, Council, for this important conversation. Right now, we do have advisory team meetings scheduled for tomorrow and the next one in April, and we'll continue to host those approximately every 5 to 6 weeks. Kind of a parallel effort to that, we have two different processes going on. One is a greenhouse gas inventory update, which is being conducted by the University of South Florida. The information from that inventory should be available by the end of May, and that inventory will give us a very specific picture of both our municipal carbon emissions and our community-wide carbon emissions, and will include some high-level recommendations and goals, which then will be incorporated into the second process, which is ongoing, which is our climate action and equity plan. The RFQ for that closes tomorrow. That climate action and equity plan will be an 18-month process whereby we go and listen to the community, where we talk to city departments, and we incorporate all that science and data that USF is going to be handing us, and we will make robust recommendations and set timelines and goals within that plan that the city can act on.
Mr. Reamer, just going back to Councilman Miranda's point, and going back to my football analogy, just because we can break a tackle and receive some monies from the Biden administration doesn't mean we can't meet these goals earlier than what is planned out.
I think that's certainly a reasonable thing to look at and a reasonable goal to shoot for. Right now, we are anxiously awaiting the data so we can know exactly where those goals should land when we look at the cost and, frankly, the science behind how quickly we need to act. Yes.
And again, this resolution is aspirations. It will come more to fruition when this city council passes ordinances.
I think that's the hope of the climate action plan. And in fact, you'll see that specifically in the RFQ that we're ready to get to work on this. We're ready to go into our land use development code. We're ready to go into our transportation and our stormwater management policies and handbooks and make meaningful change to help reduce our carbon emissions and to help prepare our infrastructure and our community for the impacts of climate change. Absolutely.
Thank you. So we can even move faster than we're anticipating. There is a possibility.
That's how fast he's moving.
That-
He's already on it.
He's already passed us. He's already gone. Councilman Miranda, will that help answer the question or help answer your request?
Please unmute yourself, sir.
Yes, it has that, but the CIP tax is what I'm concerned about. It ends in 2027. And if Mr. Whitmer's going to give us a detail of all of the needs of the city departments, every one of them, and what are we going to tackle first, and how is that money going to be spent on what item between now and 2027? Because you have the last bite, I think in another year or two, you will have to take that, and you get that. That's the last one, for the last 4 or 5 years, and that's it. That's a 30-year thing. So if we can find that out, then maybe what I'm saying is duplicated by Mr. Whitmer. But it has to have some goal set. If we have the money and we spend it all in one area, I don't know. I don't know what goals he's working on. I don't know if he means a 50% or 20% of something, whether it's cars or fire engines or safety vehicles, or I don't know. I'm not involved in the administration decisions. I haven't been involved in none of that. So I don't know what those goals are, neither does the rest of the council right now. So until those goals are realized, I don't know what else to do.
Councilman, if I may, Mr. Chair, Councilman Miranda had mentioned something about even pushing it to August 5th. Is that amenable to you? Councilman Dingfelder? I would much rather get this done sooner than later, but I understand Councilman Miranda's point.
Yeah, I'm comfortable either way. The only suggestion I might have, Councilman Citro, is perhaps just to continue the item as it stands right now without specifically saying what we're going to do and what document we're going to generate, in July or August, leaving it a little more vague because we don't know what the conclusions and recommendations are going to be from these various panels and committees that Mr. Reamer was just telling us about. So, I'm comfortable no matter how you want to do it. I would suggest just taking this matter, continuing it so the community knows that we're on top of it. We're not just, shelving it and forgetting about it. We're going to continue it to a date certain, and on that date certain, we'll have a lot more information from the administration, and then we can craft whatever we need to craft at that time.
All right, then if I may, Mr. Chair, my motion will be to continue this continue this until August 5th. And if there is a time before, there will be a time before that when another draft will be given to city council members.
15th, sir, 15th.
15th?
Yes.
August 15th.
I'm sorry. No, August 5th is correct. Yeah,
August
I'm sorry,
5th.
we're looking at the wrong month.
Thank
You're
you.
right, sir.
August 5th.
Before we take a vote, just a few comments. I will support this because it is a continuance, and we're not letting this discussion die.
Mm-hmm.
Climate change is real. It's happening. Sea level rise is real. It's happening. Look at how we have been as humans in the last 150 years. Look at post-Civil War. We have trains running. We go into automobile manufacturing. We go into non-renewables, plastics. We are fracking. We are taking everything that we can out of this earth, and we're using it. Continuous consumption. No one can say that this is normal in the process of how Earth is, using all these natural resources, polluting the atmosphere, building in places that we shouldn't be building. Because you see, from Miami to the other coast, wherever there's land, they want to develop it. In these flood areas, hurricane-prone areas, earthquake-prone areas, whatever it is. We have been abusing the earth, us as humans. When we say man-made climate change, it's real, and we are the guilty party as mankind because we are putting these things out there. We are creating, we are taking from the earth in such a rapid way that the earth is not renewing these resources. Many of these resources are non-renewable. I'm sick and tired of being pushed around by the state government. We're just trying to do the right thing. We're just trying to answer to our constituents and those that care about the environment. Councilman Citro, you say it, home rule and preemption. We speak, and there's already somebody out there ready to propose something at the state level to keep us from doing it. And for what? Is it something that they're passionate about? Or is it something used for re-election to put on a mailer saying, we are protecting you from the grips of local government? No, we're trying to do the right thing. If we destroy our environment, if we continue on this path, what are we going to leave for future generations? Because we can't see it, sea level rise is happening at such a small level, a small amount. We can't see it, but year after year, throughout our lifetimes, we will see significant damage. Significant damage to the point where it's really the point of no return. And then what? Do we say, I wish we could go back 50 years? Well, guess what? We don't have time machines. We can't go back. We've done so much damage in the last century and a half, so much damage in the last 50 years. This is long overdue. I appreciate you bringing this up. I appreciate you continuing this and not pulling this item. Because if it was just to pull the item and just let this die on the vine, I was not going to support it. But every council member, most council members have spoken about this. We have our goals. I know that this administration is serious about reaching these goals, and it may not be 2045, it might be sooner, it might be 2030, whatever it is, but we spoke earlier about the Nissan Leaf, a fully electric vehicle. I saw in the news yesterday another automobile manufacturing announcing that it will stop making combustible engines. This change is coming. We're not fighting the petroleum industry. We're not trying to ban gas stations. We're not doing any of that. It's all these scare tactics. I've been around politics enough. There's a lot of fear, a lot of buzzwords that are used that strike panic in people. But the world is changing, and it has been. Where was the typewriter industry protesting when computers were taking over? They weren't, because technology was happening. The world was changing, and you have to embrace that. But when it comes to the environment, we can't go back in time. We can't go back and fix mistakes, because we are reaching a point of no return, and it's going to be very, very dangerous. It's going to be a very, very scary world. I'll stop there. I don't know if Chief of Staff is still on. Do you have anything to add, sir, before we go to a vote?
I do. John Bennett, Chief of Staff. Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to focus on Mr. Miranda's request within the motion. I understand exactly where he's coming from. I've been working with Mr. Ruggiero, our Chief Financial Officer, as well as Mr. Ruggiero, who oversees our logistic and asset management, specifically our fleet. And they are doing a deep assessment on our vehicle replacement. And I asked specifically for those two groups to work with Mr. Remmer to understand the availability of technology and where that meets our vehicle replacement from a functional, a safety, and most importantly, a clean energy perspective, in alignment with the available financial resources, potential grants, and even other purchasing or procurement opportunities to move this as fast as possible. So we are going to, actually, we appreciate Councilman Miranda's injection into the motion of that, and we will work diligently to bring that back along with the other wraparound request.
Thank you very much. Councilman Miranda.
Based on what Mr. Bennett just said, I withdraw, because in essence, I don't want a duplication. He hit the nail on the head. He drove the anvil deep, and we'll have that, and possibly, because we're doing this, we might be able, like he stated earlier, to secure some federal money to really make this really be a super duper hit home run for the whole city. Thank you.
We're going football terms, baseball terms. Nobody talks about hockey. We won a Stanley Cup. Nobody talks about the third period. Nothing. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just asking what the motion ultimately on the floor is, President.
My motion is to continue this resolution until, what did we say, August 5th, but there will be a draft presented before then.
A substitute is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion from Councilman Citro. We have a second from Councilman Dingfelder. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Good.
May I make closing statements, please?
Yes, sir.
I mean, my final statements. Thank you, council members. Thank you, Chief Bennett. Thank you, Whit Rimmer. Thank you, Mayor Castor. We have so many things going for us in this. As the Chairman stated, there is 4 auto manufacturers that are going to go with their fleet entirely electric vehicles by 2035. The city can work on things to helping out the public, charging stations and parking spaces along the streets. And again, little things to score those first downs. LED lights, solar panels, and other things like that. Gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I thank you for listening to me. I'm hoping that the stakeholders that were invited to the table last time to discuss this, there were 2 that showed up. I hope the other stakeholders that are involved in this will also show up this next time around so that we can all work together. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Council.
And I'll just final remarks. I remember an article from 2017 when Hurricane Irma was coming our way. And in so many words it said, you know, you can't beat Mother Nature. And when Mother Nature comes back with a vengeance. But it reminds me of a poem. One of my favorite poems is, you can't beat death, but you can beat death in life sometimes. And what does that mean? You can't beat Mother Nature. The world is evolving, Earth is evolving. But we can do our part to make sure that we are sustainable, that we are taking care of our environment, that we're doing the best we can and not just polluting and taking and making things worse. So I'm glad that we're having this discussion. I'm glad that the administration is supportive of this. I know this is one of the mayor's big goals, so good. Next item, item number 67, we have a report from Sharisha Hills.
Is this an in-person report or receive and file?
It was
I think it's a receive and file.
And this is my, this is on the disability parks, correct?
Yes, so this is the ADA
Okay.
accessibility.
Yeah, and I think there was a little bit of confusion in the motion. My motion also went to not just ADA, but disability accessible parks with regards to recreational facilities being accessible based on wheelchairs, mobility, inability to walk, sensory issues, etc., and whatnot. But what I'm going to ask is this. I'm going to make a follow-up motion, if I may, that the administration report back to us. We pass our budget by October 1st. We usually have the mayor, I think, present the budget around September. So I'd like to have a separate report by, let's say, gosh almighty, the first or second week in September. Mr. Shelby, let me ask you something. When does the mayor, if you know, usually make the budget presentation?
Oh, I bet you Mr. Rogero, if he's online, or the chief of staff would know that date.
Do y'all know?
July or August.
I believe it's earlier
John
than
Bennett,
September. Sure.
August.
Okay.
Madam Chief of Staff, it's usually in the first week or 2 of August.
Okay, and thank you for that, Chief. Appreciate that, sir. So I'll make a motion, if I may, for the last week of August for a report to come on the fiscal year, what are we in, 2022 budget, and the advancements that it makes in disability accessible parks and recreational facilities for our young people throughout the city of Tampa. I always say it, whether it's a $50,000 advancement or a $100,000 advancement, whatever it may be, you know, we should continue to advance in that regard every single year for East Tampa, West Tampa, North Tampa, South Tampa, et cetera, so that, you know, a parent raising that child with cerebral palsy or with autism or Down syndrome or with mobility issues can know that the city of Tampa continues to make gains for them. And by the way, we are. I mean, this is such a critical issue. As you all know, I speak about it with great passion. I'm just the kind of guy that if I'm going to speak up about something with passion, it's because it affects me. And this issue does a great deal because of my brother Juan, and, you know, growing up like I did with people with intellectual disabilities all my life, and just something that's so critical. But we have been making great gains on this issue, starting under the prior administration, beginning with an autism-friendly Tampa program and making sure that all of our services, that our first responders, that Parks and Recreation, et cetera, are accessible to all people regardless of disabilities, et cetera. Going forward with a new Tampa Disability Park. I know that part of the East Tampa improvements that the mayor has made with the leadership and administration and great fanfare and support from Councilman Goods will include disability accessible facilities. So I think that's great. And I know that we're going to continue to do that, but I just want to have that separate issue continue to be set aside because it's so important. It is. I mean, it's so important. It's important because if you're raising a kid like that, then it's the world to you, and it should be the world to us, and I know that it is. So I'll make that motion if I may.
Sir, and that would be for August 26th under staff report?
If I may. And just a written report. I don't need anyone to be here, and just something in writing for all of us just to know. I don't like to waste people's time, et cetera. Just a nice paper telling us that, and that's all I want.
Second.
We have a second from Councilman Citro, and I'm glad you brought that up. Earlier this morning, I read an email from Ms. Sandy Sanchez as well as Ms. Martha Vila regarding the ADA issues at Vila Brothers Park. And not just Vila Brothers Park, but every park in the city of Tampa. We want it to be accessible to everyone. Every park to every person. We have a second from Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And Ms. Sharisha Hills, I see you're on the line. Just want to say thank you. You have a great department. I know my office drives you crazy, but parks are the backbone of many of our communities, and we have many wonderful recreational spaces that a lot of people benefit from. So thank you for all that you and your department do. Councilman Vieira.
And if I may, Ms. Hills, I see you there, and I just wanted to thank you. You're a dynamo. You're doing a great job, and I can't wait until they take off the word interim and they put a ring on it and put you there 100%, because I think you're doing a great job, and I have great confidence in you. I think you're a woman of good values and passion, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilman Citro.
And is that a motion, Councilman Vieira? Because if it is, I
To
will
put a
second
ring
it.
on it? To put a ring on it? Yeah.
Yes, that's, your office, Councilman Maniscalco, may talk to her, but I call her up, and I'm sure that she's murmuring underneath her breath, oh, good Lord, what does he want now? But let me tell you, she has helped me and people that I have sent her way quicker than I have seen other people do for us. But I've got to say that I thank the administration for allowing your staff for us to contact them directly. And Ms. Hills, thank you for everything you have done for me. And if I don't say this in the future, thank you for everything that you're going to be doing for me. Thank you very much.
And if I may amend my motion.
Yes.
For something. So my motion is, again, for the last week in August, as Chairman Maniscalco said, for a report on what progress that year's budget makes in disability access for our parks, including with facilities. And Mr. Chairman, you'd mentioned also Vila Brothers Park. I would also like a report in there for what ADA accessibility improvement it also makes in there as well. As you mentioned that, I'd love to have that in there just for a
Absolutely.
report.
I have the email with the specifics, and I can pass that on to Parks and Rec so they know. And that's coming from Sandy Sanchez with very specific details. So, all right, all in favor?
All right.
Aye. Wait, Councilman Vieira had a motion, second from Councilman Citro.
I seconded.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All in favor? Aye.
Your humor is good, but you're off today.
All right. Item number 68 is also to receive and file regarding tree trimming around one of the busiest fire stations in the country.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Yeah, this is, I made a motion to the men and women, or strike that, I made a promise to the men and women of Station 13 that we wouldn't go 2 months in Tampa City Council without talking about them. Next week, we're going to have a workshop on response times in the city of Tampa and prospective new fire stations for Channelside, for North Tampa, and for New Tampa. But this month's Fire Station 13 reminder is for tree trimming, which is a lot of the men and women who work there were indicating that in areas, particularly in Sulphur Springs, there needed to be better tree trimming because it was affecting their mobility and ability to get around. So, it's again, as Chairman Maniscalco indicated, that's the busiest fire station in the city of Tampa, one of the busiest in the United States. About 1 in 7 calls in the city of Tampa come within the region of Station 13. It has well over 10,000 calls. The number 2 is 25%. I think it's Station 11, 25% less than 13. That's out of control. So this is just something small, and I thank the administration. Again, and I'm sure Joe Greco would remind me to say this as well, interim Chief Pittman for just her our Tripp.
There you go.
I'm sorry, I know an attorney named Barbara Pittman. Tripp. I was like, okay, Tripp. Just thank you again for your continued leadership and partnership on the issue, and Mayor Castor and Chief Bennett. Thank you for everyone for your support of Station 13. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right.
Is that a receive and file for this, or are you going to take that up at the end, just to receive and file? Okay.
We'll move to receive and file. Councilman Vieira with the
Second.
motion. Second, Councilman Citro. All in favor? Aye. All right. Next up is item 69, which ties into number 4. We did not vote on item number 4. Jan McLean is here.
I am hung up with my mask here.
Mr.
Never wear
Chairman,
these kinds.
just as a point of order.
Yep. Yes, sir.
And I don't think I don't know if Jan's necessarily aware of this. In response to our original motions, the legal staff, as related to item 69, has given us a draft ordinance that is exactly what we asked them to do in January and February, which is repeal the November ordinance and go all the way back to where we were back in the fall, and just, take us back to the status quo before all this started. And that was our motions in January and February. So they gave us an ordinance in the last day or two. I took the liberty of printing that out, actually asked legal department to print it out, and I've handed y'all the hard copy, which is 3 pages, about 2.5 pages long. So I just wanted to clarify what was in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ms. McLean.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of council. Jan McLean with the Office of the City Attorney. As Mr. Dingfelder has indicated, what I'm here for you today is to explain what you have in front of you. One proposed ordinance was sired for agenda item number 4 for your consideration, which reflected the administration's proposal to revise, as the discussion had been had at the council, to include that geographic area within the downtown core, to indicate that on Sundays there would be no fees for parking between 8 and 2. The second ordinance, which was distributed yesterday and attached to a memo that was describing why you had the 2 to consider, was in direct response to the motion that was made on February 4th to bring back an ordinance which would repeal Ordinance 2020-122 that council had previously approved, and to reinstate the previous parking regulations as it existed before the adoption of 2020-122. So it's a bit of a train to follow, but that's what you have in front of you today for your consideration. The first one, the shorter one, that was sired as agenda item number 4, is the one that the department is proposing and supports. And the second one is in direct response to the council's motion to repeal. From a legal standpoint, that's my explanation. I'm here for further explanation as we go through the presentation. Mr. Vic Beatty is online to address any questions or do any explanation further.
Councilman.
You said Vic is on the line?
He's right there.
Yes, he is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking for some things, but I think, are those just going to be policies within the ordinance, Vic, when we discussed on the phone about EBOR and some of the other issues we talked about?
Yes, sir. Vic Beatty, Mobility Department, Councilman Goods. As far as EBOR is concerned and the issues that you had discussed, we are addressing these issues. We're currently working with YCDC and various stakeholders in Ybor City. We have a meeting scheduled today as well, in fact. And our goal is really to understand what their needs are and how we can further modify, some of our operations to assist Ybor City constituents. Specifically, we're looking at assisting low-income workers in Ybor City with tailored plans. We currently have a couple of plans. Maybe we haven't done a great job of going out to the community, making them aware of them, but we're also listening to see if we can tailor them further. This activity is going on currently. Our goal is to look at low-cost passes for service workers, somewhere around $30 and lesser if possible per month, and work with employers within Ybor City to make that happen. I assure you that is ongoing and it will happen. The other thing that we're also doing is, we've already created options for residents, but what we've done with the ordinance that we're recommending and that we've put forth is in understanding the overall concern that was raised initially about parking downtown. We're making sure that we are addressing that concern while keeping many of the tenets of the previous ordinance, because they did, simplify from a customer experience standpoint. I mean, I think we had, one person call in earlier today and also kind of speak to all of the different levels in the language that existed in the old ordinance. The other also is that we feel what we're proposing is best aligned with the administration's strategy, overall strategy, particularly Transforming Campus Tomorrow, as it addresses congestion. It addresses reduction in emissions. These two things, up to 30% congestion during special events and major events are caused by parking based on some studies, including those that are recommended by the International Parking Management Institute. Another reason is economic development. Low cost or free parking typically impacts turnover more than anything else. Sustainability and resilience, again, reduction in emissions, and reinvesting in the neighborhood. I'd also like to highlight that, the discussion so far and the challenge that we've been talking about and the scale of it. On-street parking is a small fraction of our overall parking inventory. Most of it is off-street, and we are talking about on-street in, a geography. The other thing is within downtown, our services are only 1/3 of the entire parking supply. So I just wanted to put that into context in terms of scale. And finally, I want to reiterate that, what we're bringing in front of you is a product of a studied effort, initially started by the Downtown Partnership, validated by the city, and then worked on by our staff in coordination with the administration. So again, I'm happy to answer any specific questions, but I think Jan did a great job of kind of clarifying why you have two documents in front of you.
Right, and last question. The caller this morning talked about charging parking at recreation centers. I don't recall any recreation centers that have any parking meters. Unless I'm unaware of any. Is that true?
So this is older language.
Okay.
And we do have some facilities where we do have on-street parking. For example, Benty Davis, which is technically a parks managed facility, and hence the language was there. But again, this ordinance had not been changed for a very long time. The rates hadn't been updated for a very long time. So we may be seeing some unintended language as well that has bled in historically. That's why we're proposing, a more efficient ordinance, if you will.
All right, I just want to make sure that I don't have a problem with beaches. That's a luxury. To go to a beach and sometimes you have parking. But I was concerned when I heard recreational, meaning a park having to pay for like a Jackson Heights Center or local parks having meters. So I just want to make sure we clear that up.
Councilman Dingfelder, then Councilman Citro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple of problems with the direction this is headed. For one thing, we took a lot of time in January and February, and we heard pretty much the same arguments from staff, with all due respect to my friend Mr. Bide. And after lots of deliberation, we basically said, okay, we hear what you're saying, but for now, let's just go back to where we were in November before all this happened, okay, and start over. And start over and do that work, okay? Go out to Ybor and do that work. I haven't heard anything about visits to Channelside, but he talks about Garrison Channel. I think that's the old term for Channelside. You know, have we had meetings in Channelside? Have we had meetings in Hyde Park Village, et cetera? So this addresses, you know, Mr. Bide, with all due respect, his proposal that was part of item 4 addresses the downtown issue, perhaps, to satisfaction, but I don't think it addresses, and he even admitted he's still in discussions with Ybor. But why are we changing? Why do we keep doing this? Okay, let's just go. Wait. I'm not asking you, Vic. That was a rhetorical why. You can come in later. My point is why do we spend so much time on this, going round and round? We made it abundantly clear in January and February where we wanted this to go. The motions were clear, and that's what's in front of you in this 2.5 pages, to go back to where we were in the fall after he's done with all this investigation, exploration, and everything else, gone to the community, briefed us, to, you know, et cetera, then we can move forward and tweak up this original ordinance. So that's what I would suggest. As a matter of fact, just to put it to a head, I'll make a motion to adopt this on first reading for today, because I think it has been appropriately noticed and everything else. No? I don't know.
Well, frankly, it wasn't on the agenda for a first reading.
No,
All right, well, then put it on for first reading at, whatever's appropriate, 2 weeks from now, as it is in these 2.5 pages, which takes us back to where we were in the fall, and staff can continue to work on it and come back and tweak it up later.
May I address your concern?
That's my, well, let me see if I get a second. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll give him a second. See where it goes.
We have a second from Councilmember Goods. Any discussion before we go to a vote? Councilman.
Mr. Bide.
Yes, sir. Vic?
Chair, thank you. So to your point, Councilman Dingfelder, in Ybor City, and going back to the original concern, the concern isn't on 7th or even the employee issues on-street parking so much as what do we want to do in that region? These are conversations that will be ongoing irrespective of parking policy. The other concern that was raised vis-a-vis residents and accommodation of residents downtown, we have addressed that as well. And so there aren't any pending issues per se to close before we can move forward with an ordinance or a policy from our perspective. There are going to be ongoing conversations with the community. At this time, what we have is going to accommodate any of those things. And I'll just end with that, but I don't want to conflate concerns because these are two different issues.
Well, just since you mentioned my name, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I got lots of emails from people downtown that had nothing to do with going to church. Okay, these were downtown residents who were very ticked off that the proposition was going to 24/7. Okay, and I'm not talking about in that exclusion zone. I'm talking about in the rest of downtown. I've gotten calls and had conversations from employees in Ybor City, some of which they work in bars and restaurants and that sort of thing, and they take advantage of some of the parking on the periphery. And we're not just talking about Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. Many of them work, the rest of the week. I think 24/7. While it might satisfy some laudable, goals that you've stated, I don't think is very sensitive to these types of issues. And that's why I can't support this blanket 24/7 proposition that you're proposing. So.
Jan McLean.
Yes, if I could, first, I wanted to clarify what you were holding up for consideration for first reading. You were talking about the ordinance that was proffered that repeals and reinstates the earlier regulations, right? Okay, I just want to make sure which one we're talking about when we're putting it on for first reading. If I could, sir, please lay some legal foundation with what you have in front of you now. According to the charter, under section 4.01, the mayor is tasked with various different obligations and the authority. And in 4.01, she is authorized to exercise direct control and supervision over all departments and divisions of the municipal government. She also has the general charge, management, control, and supervision of all property of the city. And in your code, which is section excuse me, because I want to make sure that I'm giving you the correct code sections. The provisions of the code shall be administered and enforced by the official, which of course is defined by the mayor. Over the course of time, obviously, we have a code of ordinances, which has laid out different regulations and different parameters with which the official then works within and enforces. We are not here to suggest that we are not working back and forth with the council, but in this particular area and arena, the charter and the code specifically says that it's the mayor's prerogative and authority, and that the mayor delegates to the official, who is the director of the department, to enforce and administer these particular the regulations. If I could continue on just a little bit.
Ms. McLean, you've confused me a little bit, that last portion.
Which last portion?
If this legislative body is putting forth an ordinance, we're looking to change an ordinance.
Right,
and the ordinance is changed, it is then directed to and approved, it is then directed to the administration to enforce the ordinance that this body has put forth, correct?
Well, potentially, sir, if you had a blank slate and you looked at the charter and you looked at the code, the mayor is authorized to operate all of the property of the city. The exercise of direct control and supervision over all departments, divisions in municipal government, general charge, management, control, and supervision of all property of the city. And so under the code, the departments are created, and the official delegates her authority to the director of that department. In this case, we have the parking division of the transportation department.
That operates the property.
And that's part of the property within the city. And it also says in the code in 15.1 that it's the director that can designate zones in which the meters can be placed. And what the department brought to you was a working back and forth to recognize an ongoing program. That's what Vic was talking about as far as sustainability and resiliency. And they had worked with the Downtown Partnership and other groups, and with my understanding, I wasn't at those meetings, to try to get everybody involved and recognize what was going to be proffered to you back in November. There was there was a resolution on the fees, there was an ordinance that took it back to a much more efficient, elegant implementation of what parking meters would be regulated 24/7. What that also gives is the flexibility of the director to regulate those parking meters. For instance, you see bags put on the parking meters if you have special events. And what they're moving towards, and what was explained in the November hearings, was they were moving towards apps so that people could have better access, and they would be able, the department would be better able to control what was happening and reflected within whatever metered zones they were in. So as we move forward in this, I just wanted to advise the council of the relationship between the council and the administration in the implementation of these programs. And sometimes less is more. If you have what you adopted back in November, you've provided the flexibility in the charter, despite the fact that, like I said, if you had a clean slate, we wouldn't necessarily need those ordinances in order to operate the department and the properties and the metered zones.
Because the director could change the policy to the needs of our constituents.
Pursuant to the code, and the director answers to the mayor. Pursuant to the mayor, the charter, the mayor has that authority. So it works backwards and down. So at this point in time, I know that the administration, through the director, has proffered the downtown recognition of Sunday 8 to 2 without the fees. And
I see my attorney looking, so
I know, I'm making him run
He has something
around.
to say, so Ms. Shelby, you
I only
wanna say
brought
what
one
you have to
copy.
say, sir? Okay.
I only brought one copy
Normally,
for me.
normally when he does that, he has a rebuttal on these issues, so
I'm surprised you haven't gone to.
yeah, I'm surprised he hadn't got up earlier.
Mr. Chairman, if I get the Florida statutes.
Councilman
Well, why
Dingfelder.
don't you use that? Never mind.
I'm about ready to wind up anyway. So I just what I wanted to do is lay the foundation for the legal going forward, as Mr. Dingfelder is asking us to repeal the ordinance that council had already previously approved in November. Where we stand right now, the council and the administration may find themselves in the best position in the implementation with all of the aspects of community involvement, sustainability and resiliency, revenue and finance. All of those things you have in front of you would give you the most flexibility in recognizing the downtown core.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Well, I've got a couple of issues going on here. Some of them are very big picture issues. Some of them are very small and relate to parking in this ordinance. In the big picture, and Jan and I have known each other 20 plus years, she's one of the smartest folks around. But Ms. Grimes has told us many, many times that it's her job to give us legal advice and not go into policy, and especially as related to defending staff. Mr. Bidet is on there. He can defend the staff's position, but I'm sorry, and I didn't interrupt Jan, but I felt like it. You were straying way over into defending staff's position. This is what they did, this is why they did, et cetera, et cetera. If that's the position of the legal department, then it makes it very difficult, especially when we get into these issues where we might not necessarily agree with staff's position. Okay, that's number one. Number two is I had this charter conversation with Ms. Grimes, Ms. McLean, Ms. Zellman, Mr. Shelby, I think was on the phone, a few nights ago. And and I heard where they were headed, okay, but it didn't make sense because on the one hand they're saying, well, council, you probably really don't have any business playing in any of this parking stuff, okay? That seems to be the underlying tone, and then we're probably going to hear that. We heard that as related to the CRB. We're probably going to continue to hear that as related to many, many other parts of the code as they refine this position. And I was hoping we could avoid this, and I actually asked Ms. Grimes, let's just avoid this. But council seems to want to bring it up. The problem with that is they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth, because on the one hand they say council really shouldn't be playing with these ordinances because that's too much detail, that's too much involvement, council shouldn't be meddling in this. But at the same time they're bringing us back an ordinance that does exactly that and says this council is authorizing 24/7 parking. Okay, if they think we don't have any business in it, then maybe we shouldn't have an ordinance at all. But they say we need an ordinance. All I'm saying, council, is, and I know I didn't want to go there, Ms. Grimes, and thank you for popping up on the screen. I didn't want to go there today, and I asked you that. But all I'm saying is, in January and February, this council made a vote, and somebody told me it was a unanimous vote by February, that we would just return back to where we were turn the clock back to where we were in November, and that's exactly what this 2.5-page ordinance does. Thank you.
That's been my concern a while. Sometimes it's like a double-edged sword again, and that's why when we talked about it a couple of months ago, we run into these issues where, sometimes, interpretation, and of course we rely on our city attorney because she's for the charter. That's who gives us our legal advice, and we go with that. But I do think at some point, and no offense to you, Jan, you're doing your job, but at some point, I asked Mr. Shelby to get Ms. Grimes eventually. There needs to be some type of workshop so we can clear up some of these issues about what authority this council has and what authority the administration has. And if we could come to a point that we have to put this on the ballot so there's a clear and definite focus point of who has what authority, when, where, and how. And then we don't have these issues about, I have an ordinance in front of me. And that's why I asked Vic, I said, Vic, you're talking about policy, right? I mentioned it, he said policy. No problem with that. We got an ordinance, but certain policies have to be implemented at times. No problem with that. But when we talk about ordinances and the legislative side has a responsibility. And once it's turned over to the administration, that's their job. Have at it. You've given you the Bible here, our portion. You do what you got to do, and sometimes you have to tweak that with policies. No problem with that. So my thing at this point, we'll see how that motion goes. I did it as a courtesy, Mr. Dingfelder, but I'm just saying, Mr. Shelby, and I'm going to say it publicly, I'm direct you to go ahead and get ready to set up whatever meetings or workshop you need so this council can discuss these issues so we can be able to move forward, so we can get along with everybody. I like everybody getting along and making sure we're all on the same page. So in the future, we need to do that. I see Ms. Grimes is here because we're going to let her talk, but I didn't know about that issue until it just came up. So glad you were able to explain that issue, Jan.
Ms. Grimes.
Yes, Gina Grimes, City Attorney. Couple things. I agree with you, Mr. Goods, that I like it when everybody gets along. And I think this conversation could be filed in that category if no good deed goes unpunished. Mr. Dingfelder is texting me offline. I'd prefer not to do that. I'd prefer to discuss everything in the public. What we just did the other day was we discussed the administration's response with the ordinance that we thought you had requested, which was an ordinance that allowed for parking meters to be enforceable or operate 24/7, and for that one particular exception on Sunday mornings. That's the ordinance that was brought back to you. Mr. Dingfelder correctly pointed out that that wasn't exactly what his previous motion had requested, and that in fact what he asked for was an ordinance that repealed the previous code section, and why he questioned why we didn't bring that back. So that's why you have two ordinances that actually conflict with one another in front of you today. And in trying to explain to Mr. Dingfelder the other day as to why we presented the ordinance that we first presented, the topic of the charter came up. And I said to him, and I'll say to you, and I have no problems having a workshop going forward, but this is an age-old issue. The city council and the administration debating who has the authority to do what under the charter. And I know, Mr. Goods, you were on the Charter Review Commission and extensively evaluated the charter. And just 2 years ago, a lot of charter amendments were put out to the members of the public and they were voted upon. And those charter amendments supported a strong mayor form of government. And that's kind of the issue that it comes down to in this case. Yes, there's a separation of powers provision in the charter. It specifically says and starts with, except as otherwise expressly herein provided. The council, all legislative powers shall be vested in and exercised by the city council, except as otherwise herein expressly provided, which that means that when the charter provides that the mayor has certain authority, the council does not have the authority to legislate on that subject. That's all we're saying here. That's it. It's that simple. The mayor has control, management, supervision over all city property. That includes some streets, includes parks, includes a lot of other facilities. All we're saying is that when it comes to those powers that are expressly provided for to the administration, to the mayor under the charter, the council cannot legislate in those areas. That's it.
I understand what you're saying, and I respect what you're saying about the charter review, but I think we had a couple of members that sat on that charter review, and as I reflect back now, and as I reflect how the conversation was going about certain issues, and I'm not saying that people did certain things, but some of the verbiage that I recall hearing and the intent have kind of switched a little bit from where separate where the Charter Review Commission went. And I'm not saying that. I just looking out at some of the wording, and my fault. I should have been looking extensively when it actually went on that ballot to look and see what was written and how it was worded. But some of the things that's come out of this Charter Review Commission board, now that we're seeing now, I can guarantee you some of the intent is not where we thought it was supposed to go, where it's going, and that's no fault of any administration, nobody. But that's why I said I think this council need to look at some of the things to make sure we have a definite line of who's on what side of what line, so we don't have these kind of conflicts. And because I just don't like us argue. I like us to get along. Sometimes you're going to have that in fairness, but then we come together, we make it work, we make it better for the client, the people. So that's all I'm saying. I appreciate your words.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I did want to address one thing that Mr. Dingfelder said, and I appreciate your words, but the Office of the City Attorney represents both the administration and the City Council. So you'll find us, and we had this conversation the other night, in the position sometimes of being in the middle of needing to advocate both for the administration's position and being here in front of City Council and advocating City Council's position. So if it sounded like I was straying too far into one side or the other, I was explaining my duties for the administration while I'm standing here in front of you explaining City Council as well. So I'm serving both masters. Just wanted to put that on the record.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I don't want to belabor this, but Mr. Goods, you said something that concerned me because, as you know, I was also on the Charter Review Commission, as was Morris Massey. Marty Shelby was there with us, Councilman Citro. Believe me, I've now gone back and listened to the recordings of almost all of our meetings. I've looked at the minutes of all our meetings. I've read the ballot language. I've read the minutes of the City Council meetings when the Charter Review Commission brought back our recommendations to them. And everything we voted on was very clearly established, approved of by the Charter Review Commission, and then ultimately by the City Council. And I just didn't want to leave anyone watching or any member of the public with the impression that something happened between the time we were at the Charter Review Commission and the language ended up on the ballot, because unfortunately I've spent a lot of time going back and reliving that experience, and I can assure you that everything that we voted on during that Charter Review Commission process was accurately reflected in the charter ballot language that ultimately was approved by the voters. So I apologize for getting off track, but I just didn't want to leave that out there.
You sat on that with us. Mr. Shelby was there, Mr. Citro was there, Mr. Carlson. I think all of us have like a different type of interpretation of the whole process, and that's why I'm just spewing that out. I'm not saying that was the case that happened. I'm just saying what my memory was. I don't know what Mr. Citro's memory was, Mr. Carlson, or Mr. Shelby, but we all were there, and I'm going to leave it at that, but we all were there, and I just have a different perspective. And again, thank you for your comments.
And I certainly don't want to chime in on this subject, and I certainly had no intention to do that, but as a full discussion is taking place by people who preceded me, I just have to share with you, Council, my concern. My concern is the way these charter changes perhaps have been interpreted by the legal department, Why that intent, I don't know. I looked at the ballot language myself, and I questioned whether the voters, when they ultimately made the decision, did they know that they were hamstringing and limiting the power of their legislative body? Because I'm concerned if that's the intent, then the new paradigm is for city council to delegate your authority by ordinance because you have no authority under the charter. Now that does not make sense to me, but I'm willing to have that discussion. I just want to point out, if we're going to be quoting sections of the charter, section 4.01 is the mayor. And there's a list of, 10 or 11 things that are the mayor's duties, all in the paragraph. Let me read to you job 1. Job 1. The administration and enforcement of all laws, ordinances, contracts, and franchises. That's job 1. But we can have this discussion down the road. Thank you.
All right, so where are we at?
Got my motion and a second, I believe.
And this is to go back to what was in place before the adopted 2020-122, which was from November 5th. Is that correct, Councilman Dingfelder?
That's correct. The legal staff has drafted this pursuant to our motions in January and February. This takes us back to where we were in November before we started down this path. And
Okay.
the administration, the VA, et cetera, is welcome to come back and tweak it from there, but at a future date.
All right. Councilman Dingfelder has a motion. Councilman Good seconded that motion. Roll call vote. Roll call. Let's do a roll.
Just to clarify, that is for the legal department to place it on first reading and consideration on April 1st.
First reading and consideration, April 1st, correct?
Correct.
Very good.
Thank you. Vieira,
I voted no on the original repeal, so to speak. I'll vote no for purposes of this.
Goods,
I'm gonna vote no.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Carlson, Citro,
No.
Miranda,
No.
and Maniscalco. Motion failed with Vieira, Goods, Citro, and Miranda voting no, and Carlson being absent.
All right. So what about item number 4? That ties into this. Item number 4, we've already heard everything for 69, so this just ties back into that.
Mr. Chairman, if I just may, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney, I just want you to know that is on your agenda, and it is noticed for first reading consideration.
Okay. Anybody wish to read item number 4?
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and read it. Let's see where it goes.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
File number E 2021-8, Chapter 15, ordinance being presented for first reading consideration. An ordinance to the City of Tampa, Florida relating to the parking meter regulations, making revisions to the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, Chapter 15, parking, amending Article 2, regulations, permits, penalties, Division 2, parking meter regulations, Section 15-81, hours of operation for parking meters, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilman Miranda. Yes, sir, Councilman Vieira?
Question on the, maybe I'm the only one. I'm a bit confused. Is anybody else confused? Thank you. Okay, so what we're voting on now, Ms. McLean, could you, for me, I'm a bit slow today. I don't know why it is, but if you could explain, ma'am.
It's warm in here. Jan McLean, the Office of the City Attorney. The proposed ordinance that is in front of you now amends the current ordinance, which is the 24/7, but includes an exception for the geographic area that's delineated
Okay.
for the downtown between 8 and 2 for no parking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
We have the motion and the second. Roll call vote.
Just a question on the motion.
Yes, sir.
Ms. McLean? Or Ms. Grimes, either one? So you're specifically asking council to prescribe hours of operations for meters in this ordinance, correct? 24/7, except in that limited area. And you're asking council to vote on that.
That we are responding to what we thought was the request of council over the course of January and February meetings.
I understand.
And so we have brought back.
I'm talking about the text of the document in front of us today.
I know what you're saying.
Okay, but my point goes to the charter. Okay? So you are telling us, you're giving us your legal advice that we have the authority to adopt an ordinance that addresses the hours of operation and the geographic scope of those meters and the enforcement of that in this ordinance.
We are following what has historically been, which is that city council would adopt these types of ordinances and reflect it in the code. Do I think, in my legal opinion, that we need this? No, I don't. I think that the director has the authority to establish geographically and to not impose the parking meter rates during that time without a code.
Has somebody already signed this for legal sufficiency or going to sign it for legal sufficiency on behalf of the legal department?
As far as coming in front of council for council to approve it?
I'm saying this number 4 is somebody in the legal department, either Ms. Grimes or you or somebody else, going to sign this saying that in regard to, you always sign the bottom of ordinances.
It's been signed. It's in SIRE.
Okay, so that's legally sufficient, and that's the position today of the legal department, that we're good to go on endorsing, and we have the authority to do these hours. That's what the legal department's saying today.
That's what you have in front of you to act on today. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you very much. And let's get some more information on these parking meter regulations that we're talking about on 4. Do other cities have the same thing as we're talking about today?
So, Councilman, it's a mixed bag, but some cities do have similar. The general trend is consistent with our strategy, and that is pricing, particularly on-street parking, in a manner to one, ensure demand, and the other, move related strategies like housing affordability and climate change forward.
And the next question, how much money does the parking department contribute to the general fund?
$0 today.
You're not 1 penny.
Not 1 penny.
Are you subsidized at all by the general fund?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. Who read item number 4? Was it you, Councilman Goose?
No, it was me.
Oh, it was you, Councilman Citro.
Councilman Miranda seconded it.
We have a motion from Councilman Citro. This is item number 4. With a second from Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote.
Miranda,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Goose, Dingfelder,
No.
Citro,
I am going to vote yes, but I need to make this statement that I'm still very upset that the carve-out that I was asking for to help community organizations such as AA and other church-oriented organizations was not fulfilled. I had to make that statement, but I will vote yes on this.
Carlson, and Maniscalco.
No.
Motion carried with Dingfelder and Maniscalco voting no and Carlson being absent.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we just voted on an item, struck down an item. So I want to make it clear. So now, Vic, what you stated is that now we're into a policy phase. So that means since Ms. McLean says that you now are the director of that department, and the things that we've asked for, Ybor and these things, it's up to you to get these policies that you said you would implement to make sure that the citizens and the needs that they're asking this council to do. Am I correct, that statement?
So policy-based items are ongoing, and generally, yes, your statement is correct. The item that, or the concern that was raised relative to Ybor City, we will be implementing and are working on. But that item isn't related to the overall ordinance.
That concerns me, but we're gonna go with it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Chair,
Yes?
I would like to announce that the second reading and adoption will be held on April 15, 2021 at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. The rest of the stuff should be lighthearted. Item number 70 is Mr. Shelby.
Do you want to take that now, Mr. Chairman?
You want to wait till the end?
Or you want to finish up the other business? Because this
All
is
right.
relatively inside baseball housekeeping.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny.
All right.
Better fun time.
Nothing to see here. All right. Item 71, we have a staff report from Vic Bede regarding honorary signs. Are there any questions or comments regarding that? No? All right. Can we get a motion to receive and file? Motion from Councilman Goods, second from Councilman Citro. All in favor? Aye. Item number 72, another very, very good resolution by Councilman Vieira. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I know that we have listening my dear friend, who was actually now one of my wife's dear friends, and Sarah Couture, who is with the Fines and Fees Justice Center, who I know is listening. I was requested by Sarah and others with this wonderful organization to do a follow-up resolution on legislation that's pending in Tallahassee on what's called fees and fines reform, which is, one of those things that, we often talk about things that are built in within our system of criminal justice and things that we just take for granted, I guess, as Floridians and often as Americans, that really play such a critical role in perpetuating an ugly cycle of misery, an ugly cycle of poverty, an ugly cycle of basic deprivation for human beings in the United States. One of them was Amendment 4, where a lot of people went, wow, I didn't know that Florida had 1 in 4 of people in the United States who can't vote because of a felony conviction. I'll be darned, we didn't know that. And we made some ground on that, not as much as we should have, but whatever. But the other one is with regards to fees and fines reform. This is legislation which would seek to end suspension of driver's licenses based upon non-payment of traffic fines. Mind you, this has nothing to do with child support or other issues like that. But if you take a look at the statistics, it's just describes an ugly cycle of human misery. There are 2 million Floridians have had a suspended license essentially due to poverty. Think about it. If you get yourself a driving a citation and then you can't pay it, and these are expensive. These are $170, $180, $150, whatever dollars, often jacked up 40% because a private for-profit collection agency takes over the solicitation of this debt. You can't go to work. You can't go to work at Walgreens or CVS or Walmart or wherever it may be. You can't pick up your kids from school. And if you do that and you get caught, you will be arrested and you will have a criminal record. Talk about creating an ugly cycle of poverty. Ironically, a lot of these fees and fines go to fund our clerks of court system. How bitterly ironic that such an unjust, ugly, punitive system of funds our clerks of court system. In 2017, there were 1.1 million suspension notices sent to Florida drivers due to overdue court debt. That's about 1 in 15 drivers in the great state of Florida. So this is all about a cycle of misery. And this is something that is bipartisan. This is not partisan legislation. I know that State Senator Jeff Brandes, a very thoughtful Republican, has previously championed this. I don't know who's taking this up right now. So, this is something where we can really get on board for supporting some progress. Amendment 4 was bipartisan. About 60% well over 60% of Floridians, Republicans and Democrats, came to support this, and this is bipartisan too. But it strives for social justice and making wrongs right in our own time, and so I'm proud to do this. Thank you, sir.
And Councilman Vieira, thank you for bringing this up. You know, you got to ask yourself, how much do you punish somebody? You know, I mean, they pay a debt to society, or somebody gets in trouble, or whatever it is that leads to not just license suspension, but in general. And then it's fines, and then it's late fees, and it's, I know you're struggling, I know we got you down, but let me just make it worse for you, which is a ripple effect. Everything that you said, then they can't go to work, then they can't do this and that, and it just doesn't make any sense. What about forgiveness? What about second chances, real second chances? Not, you know, here you are, but you got to pay all these fines and fees. I mean, who is it helping? At the end of the day, this is not the way to do things. I appreciate you bringing this forward. Any other comments or questions, or can we get a motion to move this resolution?
So moved.
Motion from Councilman Vieira, second from Councilman Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, item number 73, sir. Did you find a date, or is this going to be?
We're waiting. We have to wait there on spring break.
To be
We're trying-
determined. Okay.
to be determined.
What was it? Behind the scenes baseball? What? Inside baseball. My friend calls it the Chicago way.
It's a sports metaphor day.
This is
Football.
this is the day of the metaphor, I guess.
Yeah.
Council. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Item 70 was a motion initiated by Council Member Dingfelder, seconded by Council Member Citro on February 4th, for me to look into modifying the procedures of allowing staff presentations to be made at first reading consideration. And that certainly is a lot of times the practice, but it raises a very timely opportunity for a discussion. And because of that, Council, I'm going to be suggesting and recommending to you that City Council set a special discussion meeting. Now, you've had special call meetings, and you know what a workshop is.
Please speak into your microphone.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I can't get too loud. Okay, but I will talk directly in front of it. You're familiar with, obviously, the regular meetings, the workshops, and the special call meetings. Previous councils have utilized special discussion meetings, and I'll just read to you from the rules just to familiarize you with them. A special discussion meeting shall be held for the purpose of discussing a single issue of particular interest. It shall not be necessary as a condition of holding a special discussion meeting that 4 or more members of council be present. Any member of the council may call a special discussion meeting at any date, time, and place by motion and approval of the City Council at a regular meeting. And this is important. No official action shall be taken irrespective of whether a quorum is present. So I am asking council to consider a special discussion meeting on departmental operation, otherwise internal housekeeping. And of course, the department is City Council. What are the things to be discussed? Primarily, as raised by item number 70, the order of business at the meetings, the length of the meetings, staffing issues moving forward, and how council can better coordinate with the clerk's office and the administration. My suggestion is to have a separate day council for 2 hours. It shouldn't take longer than that. My suggestion is 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And the date that I think will probably work for most council members that I'm going to ask you to consider is Monday morning, March 29th from 9 to 11. Now, this is not a special call. No official action will be taken. It will be in City Council chambers, and it will be televised on the second floor. There will be no public comment. It will be a noticed public meeting, and it will be available for the public to view live on the second floor. Minutes will be taken, and it will comply with the Sunshine Law. And you will be able to talk to each other without taking the time at a regular meeting after a very long day to talk with each other about the way City Council conducts its business. It'll be your opportunity to come to a consensus and provide direction, but any action that's required will have to come back to City Council at a regular meeting. So it's an informal meeting. My recommendation that it be all in person in chambers with no remote participation. It will comply with the Sunshine Law, and again, no official action will be taken. If that is something that council is interested in, I strongly recommend it. I will, if it's council's desire, to work with the chair and the chairman's office to put together an agenda to address these kind of issues that have been raised. If any other council member wishes to do it, to suggest something, I will be happy to work on that, to bring this all together. This is an opportunity for city council to be able to do internal housekeeping and address the kind of issues that is available for discussion amongst yourselves, but doesn't have to be taken up. For instance, if we were to discuss it today, we would only first be getting into this discussion at 4:20 in the afternoon, 4:15 in the afternoon. So my recommendation, council, in response to item 70, yes, that is done, but the process in looking into modifying that, just like the process of moving staff reports to 1:30 in the afternoon has to be formalized into the rules. Right now, it's just a standing direction of council, but that does have to be formalized if that is working. If it's working, great, and if it's not, it's the opportunity for you to, and of course, it is a public meeting, so obviously the administration can be there. The clerk certainly would want to be there, I would think, because the goal here is to better coordinate your order of business at the meetings and to be able to address city business. So thank you. And I look forward to your input if that's your desire, and if not, I'm looking for direction.
Mr. Shelby, I love my job. And any moment I can spend with these fine people, I gladly accept. March 29th is a great day. Councilman Dingfelder.
So I think it sounds like a neat idea to sit around the table and hash out some of these ideas, obviously open to the public, open in the sunshine.
It would be in this room, and the public would be able to see it on monitors on the second floor. It would be a noticed meeting, but obviously it would comply with the notice, location, and minutes requirements to fulfill Florida statutes. But what it wouldn't have is it wouldn't have public comment. But whatever you do decide on would have to come back to City Council during a regular meeting for you to take public comment, to be able to take public comment and have it an agended item. So, yes.
My only concern about it is, and I know we've probably all talked about this with you individually in the past, but my only concern is it's not our meeting. I mean, we participate in it, but it's the public's meeting. So the fact that we would be doing this in somewhat of a vacuum and not getting some public input in terms of saying, you know, how we're going to modify these procedures that might have a big impact on the public. So I'm not saying the public wouldn't have an opportunity to chime in, you know, once we've come to some sort of conclusion or consensus, as you said. But that part bothers me a little bit, is like, you know, why wouldn't we accept some limited public input, 30 minutes of public input before or after or while we're having that discussion. We should have a discussion with the community. Many members of the community spend as much time as we do, you know, down here and addressing these issues. So that's my 2 cents.
And if I can answer that, and I mean this with all due respect, both to you, councilman, and the city council members, and to the public, but that's exactly my point. This is a special discussion meeting on the internal department operation. Granted, it's order of business, but ultimately, do you want to spend your time, as we're talking about now, to determine how things from council quasi-box gets from the clerk into the record, and all those things that definitely need to be worked out and certainly needs council's input. Moving forward with regard to how, and of course it's been very difficult, and I just want to thank council for acknowledging all the people behind the scenes who make these meetings work. I believe that the public has no idea about how much work from staff precedes the meeting, and in talking with Ms. Fox Knowles this afternoon, how much work takes place after the meeting in order to effectuate everything that happens here. So this is an opportunity, and it's a format that really allows council in these chambers to be able to talk about those things that you don't want to take the time to talk about at 4:30 in the afternoon and having a full day's work.
Exactly.
So,
Councilman Goods.
You know, Mr. Shelby, I think it's a great idea you came up with. I see where Mr. Dingfeld's going with it, but I think this is the brotherhood here, and we need to discuss issues that we feel are important, or we feel we need to bring to the table, or how we're feeling about a subject matter. And from there, it's just discussions. And from there, if something arises out of that, we can table that and bring it back to the actual council meeting, and then have public comment about issues we think we might want to put on the table to have the voters look into, or we look into changing. I think it's a great idea to have a discussion. I think we need that. There are a lot of questions I would like to discuss with the council members. I'm sure some others have too. And I think it's a great idea, so we can talk about things.
and again, I just want to follow up on that before you move on, because you raise a very good point. And prior to the pandemic, and prior to this council with previous councils, there were times when city councils would have annual strategic planning meetings off-site, a noticed public meeting to allow these sort of items to be discussed. Perhaps they were done through lunch and went over, several hours. But with the pandemic, a lot of the rules have changed, obviously. But still, city council, I think, as a body, needs to take the time to assess and reassess and give direction about how it wants to conduct its meetings, and to hear each council member who has their own very good suggestions to be able to share.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much, sir. No, I strongly support this, and I think that it's a meeting where people are going to have to be frank about challenges that we've had, and have a very frank discussion and whatnot, and then get the public input in case if we have to make any changes. But when it comes to things like the length of the meetings, et cetera, it's not because of us, it's because it's the people's business that we're dealing with, and it's got to be done in an efficient way. And there's procedural things that we can do to make sure that, we have things like staff reports, et cetera, but make sure that hearings, if somebody's waiting for an appeal, or somebody's waiting for some, land use hearing, whatever it may be, accommodation, whatever it may be, that people are given preference in that regard, and that we can put procedures in line to make things run efficient and whatnot, to make things run efficient. So I think that by doing that, we can, make council even better and turn that single into a home run. Another sports analogy.
We can't get a goal. We can't get a hockey reference.
I start off football. I start off sport analogy. Now everybody's doing sports analogies now. Ain't that something? Huh?
Don't tell me what you can't do. Tell me what you can do.
I'm gonna raise my arm and say icing.
Do we have a motion to set March 29th at 9 a.m.?
I'll make that motion simply because it'll be a slap shot in the goal.
There you go. You got my vote.
And,
All
that,
right, we have a
and,
motion
that, and Mr. Chairman, if I can, just to follow up, that's Monday, March 29th of 2021 from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and council will meet in chambers.
Yes, sir.
Thank
We have a motion from Councilman Citro, second from? Second from Councilman Gooch, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I just wanted to make it a hat trick.
There you go.
And
Now we're on.
And Mr. Chairman, just to complicate things,
we're doing well.
just to simplify things, there was a comment Ray made about sitting around the table. That is a metaphor. As you are set up now, council will continue to practice social distancing, and public health considerations will certainly be taken into account.
Well, it's like they say, round table discussion. I have never been to a discussion where the table was round. Things we say. That concludes our agenda, and it's still light outside. Let's go to new business. Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one item for now. I don't know if y'all have seen it. There is a document that was published by the Planning Commission not too long ago, and it's called Development in the Coastal High Hazard Area, Best Practices Analysis. Obviously very relevant to a lot of things that we've been dealing with. I would love to request that the Planning Commission come over during our April 22nd workshop and obviously provide this document to us in advance and come over to us and give us a presentation on the document and well, anything that they care to talk about as related to the document. I'm not going to guide their discussion, but I think it's an extremely important document and definitely germane to where we've been and where we're going. April 22nd, right now we've got a TPD issue at 9, so I'll say 9:30 in the morning.
If I can, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chairman. In terms of scheduling your workshops, I just want to remind you that right now, no times have been set. They've just been two listed in order. But I should point out that both of them are continued workshops because of time constraints previously, and they were significant. And if you look at the items, one is about noise, and the other is about, with regard to Chapter 14, addressing the hours of operation, amplified sound, as well as distance separation. So I bring that to your attention. So perhaps maybe this would then be, and I do understand it is important, but just a reminder as to those items having previously had been continued because of time constraints.
Right, and the intent of my motion is that this item would follow those two items. I'll put it on at whatever time you suggest, Mr. Shelby, or not have a time at all.
Well, and that's one of the things that I'd like to put on the agenda for discussion at the special discussion meeting.
For
How do
today,
you want
what
to
do you want me to do?
make
put
it
it
third?
on
Make
the
it
thing
third.
as
Make
item
it third
number
on the third item on the agenda for that day.
Okay, so I'll just leave it as the third item on the agenda for that day, to invite the Planning Commission staff to come and discuss this document that they have published.
We have a motion from Councilman Dingfelder for April 22nd. Second from Councilman Goods. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Vieira.
A couple, if I may, a motion for a commendation to be awarded to Tampa Bay Best Buddies for their upcoming Friendship Walk.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, second from Councilman Citro. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I motion for staff to prepare a report on Hillsborough's Apprenticeship to Career Empowerment Program, which is being sponsored by newly elected County Commissioner Gwen Myers. And this would be a report on any attempts that the city of Tampa can make to partner up with the county to support and promote the use of apprenticeships through this program if it's feasible. And you know, let's do it. We're in March. I mean, we can have this in July. This is absolutely no
July
rush.
15th would be the first meeting we come back from.
Yes.
My birthday celebration.
Okay.
I'm going to be 25 years old. All right. Motion from Councilman Vieira for July 15th. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And I also wanted to mention to everybody that on March 24th at 6:30 p.m., the Hillsborough County Democratic Disability Caucus is having an evening celebrating the memory of Michael Phillips, which is going to be online and people can attend. I would encourage everyone to attend, including all Tampa City Council members. It's over on Facebook. I guess you can't see it on the screen there. But, you know, Mike Phillips was a great man who had significant physical disabilities and was one of the most remarkable people who lived here in Tampa. And Karen and her other son, Brian Clay, do such a great job, and so many do, in promoting his legacy. So I just want everyone to go. And then lastly, if I may, I wanted to give a commendation off-site this April. Many of us remember, this is a history thing, many of us remember, or I guess reading about in school, on the Bay of Pigs, it would have been 60 years in April of 2021 will be the Bay of Pigs. And we actually have some local, very remarkable men who were Bay of Pigs, Brigade 2506 veterans, including our Colonel Orlando Rodriguez, Luis Campesano, all of whom I believe actually would go on to serve in the United States military with great distinction thereafter. So I wanted off-site, and I'll...
What was the anniversary date, sir?
April 17th, I believe. Top of my head, I believe it's April 17th, to do a Tampa City Council commendation. And I want to be clear, by the way, in something, which is this has nothing to do with Cuba relations with the United States, the embargo, visiting Cuba, nothing like this. This is about honoring the valor and sacrifice of these men, most of whom would go on to serve in the United States military. And that would be for and I'll give this to the clerk, Silvio Domingo, Luis Campuzano, Carlos Rodriguez, Orlando Rodriguez, Felix Rodriguez, to be presented offline. And again, because sometimes Cuba issues, this has nothing to do with the embargo, with public policy on Cuba, just to honor the valor of some great patriots.
Well, I will second that. Do you know where it's going to be?
No idea.
Can you let us know?
Of course.
We have a motion and a second from Councilman Citro, and a quick story. My family was still in Cuba at the time in April '61, and my grandmother, and I have this little pocket radio. She passed away last year, so I have some of her things, but this radio that she had, listening carefully at low volume, because, you know, at the time you didn't want anybody catching you, whatever, very careful. This is after the revolution, where she would listen to the news of, you know, what was going on with the Bay of Pigs invasion. And then later that year, my family left Cuba and showed up to Tampa, and here we are. But very good. Councilman Vieira with a motion, second Councilman Citro, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, anything else, sir?
Remarkably, no. Thank you.
Councilman Citro.
Nothing from me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Councilman Goods.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to give a commendation posthumously to Mr. Earl C. Green Jr. Apparently, I found out he was one of the first EMS workers in the city.
Oh.
And I'm going to give that to the family this weekend.
We have a motion for Councilman Goods, second for Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm sorry, did you say Earl Green?
Earl C. Green, yes, sir.
EMS? EMS. Yeah, yeah. No, his son recently died. Al Green.
Earl C. Green Jr. Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, he has a daughter, Regina.
I don't know the daughter, but
I grew up with her family. Yeah. Al, and not to interrupt. You know, Al Green, who I've known, Regina, the late Earl's daughter, if this is the same one, and I believe it is, cerebral palsy, and grew up being very good friends with my brother Juan, and Al passed on, I think it was in December of this past year, and we actually gave a Tampa City Council commendation to his daughters that was presented about a month ago, and Al's now buried in Florida National Cemetery. So thank you for that, Councilman. Well done.
We have a motion for Councilman Goods, second for Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's it, sir.
Councilman Miranda?
None.
All right, and Councilman Citro, I got to hand over the gavel. I have one item. I'd like to make a motion to request the legal department and the parking division to investigate the benefits of moving section 27-28311B, commercial equipment in residential districts, into chapter 18, parking, for the purpose of more effective and uniform enforcement throughout the city, using section 15-4.5, the authority to issue citations for parking tickets under that chapter. And this is going to be under staff reports and unfinished business for April 15th, 2021. And the reason is, because in West Tampa, people park their semis all over the place. People park commercial equipment all over the place. And since I've been elected, I've been getting calls. Councilman Miranda's been getting, everybody's been getting calls. And we got to say, well, you know, we'll tell TPD, and there's always an enforcement issue. So in order to get these things under control and protect the neighborhoods, I'm making this motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, was there about to be a second? Because I just wanted to ask a
second from Councilmember Miranda.
Could you just verify, because if I understand correctly, I thought I'd heard you say chapter 18.
No, chapter 15,
Chapter
parking.
15, parking.
And then section 15-4.5, and I have the motion written out for clarity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Miranda.
Let me say also, I appreciate Mr. Miscalco saying that to Chairman, and you know, it used to be way back that we had the enforcement ability to put a placard that would stick to the windshield. That told you that if you saw that vehicle again in the city parked in the same manner, that vehicle will be towed away. So we have a sickness all over the city, and I see primarily right now, there's a semi in Armenia between right around Cherry and Palmetto that's been there now for 3 days, a tractor trailer, not a trailer, just a tractor. But it's a disease that's going all over the city. one day, one child's gonna go around that semi out to the street, and you cannot see that child. Thank you.
There's a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wait, and just before we get a motion to receive and file, I got a text message from a friend just now, and this is disturbing. I heard a rumor that they may be demolishing the Jackson House. This is just.
There we go with rumors
You
again.
see, I don't believe that. All right, can I get a motion to receive and file? We have a motion
Second.
from Councilman Good, second from Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Me in your room, I'm quite used to someone so new. Did you catch my name? Yeah, I wonder how long I've slept in. I don't know where the hell I've been. I know that's alright. Last night we met at 1, drank till 2, danced till 4, walked you home, away till dawn, slept till noon, and now one more. I got that taste, oh, to my mouth, it's like I had too much last night. It just felt so right because of you. Now I could go or I could stay, cause I got nothing planned today, and I know that's alright. Last night we met at 1, drank till 2, danced till 4, walked you home, away till dawn, slept till noon, and now one more. Why is it so easy with the lights down? Why is it so easy when the nights out? Why is it so easy with the lights down? Why is it so easy? Yeah, so easy.
Woke up late, somewhere far away from home. Pockets empty, wallet gone. The sun is streaming on down on my face. Yeah, last night was fun, let's do it again. We both know we're more than friends, and I know that's alright.